6 o'clock. Welcome to the Alameda County Water District Board of Directors meeting of 8 December 2022. It is 6 p.m. Let us roll call.
Yes, Director Sethy.
Here.
Akbari.
Here.
Gunther.
Here.
Huang. Here. And Weed.
Here. See, Dr. Gunther has just come on video. Director Gunther is out of the state and calling in via Zoom. And will be, therefore, all votes will be roll call. And let us join the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible. This time we have the oath of offices for re-elected directors who survived a interesting campaign. Oh, yes, please.
Okay, as we prepare to do our oaths of office, I'll just make a couple of housekeeping remarks. On behalf of the ACWD Board of Directors, I'd like to welcome the public's participation in this board meeting. My name is Ed Stevenson, and I serve as the district's general manager. Members of the public may participate in this board meeting in person or remotely by either using the Zoom application or by telephone. Any member of the public present in person who wishes to make comments may approach the speaker's podium at the appropriate time. For those participating remotely, note that the meeting agenda, staff reports, and presentation materials are all available on the district's website at acwd.org. You may reference the instructions at the top of the agenda for how to participate using the controls in the Zoom app or your dial pad if participating by telephone audio. This board meeting is being recorded and will be made available to the public for future viewing. And thank you all for attending, and that completes my housekeeping remarks.
Thank you. The oath of office at the beginning of the meeting. Our practice has been for the existing structure, and might continue the meeting until the end, and then transfer the gavel to the president. So, Director Sethy and Director Huang were down.
And as your general manager and on behalf of staff, we really congratulate our re-elected directors. It's a big deal, and we appreciate your service to this organization, and we look forward to working with you all for another 4 years.
Thank you.
Would you like to make any comments, Director Seth? Thank you. Then just up and away. Now we have an opportunity for public comments. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board on an item which is not on our agenda? we have any hands up from the audience?
Looking for raised hands. Ms. Marcoux, as I'm pulling I'm seeing no raised hands.
All right, no one, and remember no one from who's currently present. All right, thank you. And we will close the public comments and move to the consent calendar. Is there a desire to add any items to the consent calendar?
I'll make the motion to add items 5.3, 5.4, 5.5, and 5.6 to the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Director Sethy,
Aye.
Akbari,
Aye.
Gunther,
Aye.
Huang. Aye. And Weed.
Aye. A motion to approve the consent calendar as amended.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Director Sethy,
Aye.
Akbari,
Aye.
Gunther,
Aye.
Huang. Aye. And Weed.
Aye. This time we have a item 5.7, which is a resolution. Excuse me, we've gone up for the reorganization of the board of directors. Do you wish to take that toward the end?
We can take
5.1,
the
5.2.
reorganization now because the effect of the reorganization doesn't occur until the end of the meeting. We can talk about that. We
Right,
can do
fine.
that now.
Do we, the reorganization, our tradition has been to rotate the position of president and vice president. Do we have a motion for an appointment or selection for a president of the board?
I will make the motion to elect Director Sethy as board president and Director Gunther as board vice president.
And I'll be happy to second that.
All right. That's probably, traditionally we did them separately, but I think in this case we can do them both with one motion. Roll call, please.
Director Sethy,
Yes.
Akbari,
Aye.
Gunther,
Aye.
Huang.
Aye.
And Weed.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Next is the adoption of the 2003 calendar for the regular board meetings and board workshops, special board meetings. Is there, we received something in the email today. Has everyone received a copy of that?
Yeah, the board calendar is in the board packet. I believe it's page 67 is the last I recall. That's what staff provided to the board a few weeks ago. This is the proposed calendar. Should the board adopt it this evening, that's what we would be working with moving into 2023. The board calendar includes not only regularly scheduled board meetings, but also staff's planned board workshops for calendar year 23. And so staff's recommendation is by motion, adopt the proposed 2023 calendar of regular board meetings and special board meetings of the board of directors.
All right, thank you. Is there any question or comment? There being none, we have a motion to approve.
I'll move for adoption of the 2023 calendar. I'll second.
Second,
I'll second.
seconded by Director Gunther. A roll call, please.
Director Sethy,
Aye.
Akbari,
Aye.
Gunther,
Aye.
Huang.
Aye.
And Weed.
Aye. Item 5.7 is a resolution recognizing and expressing appreciation for Alan L. Nagy upon his retirement from the Newark City Council. As many years. I had hoped that he might be able to join us, but they're having a city council meeting in Newark tonight. We're also going through a formal recognition of his services. So if we could.
Sure, I'd be happy
write to
to
the staff, please.
read the quick discussion in the staff report. Alan L. Nagy has served on the Newark City Council since 1980 and has served as the mayor of the city of Newark since 2011. After serving the public for 42 years, Mr. Nagy has retired from Newark City Council. Mr. Nagy has been a strong advocate for Alameda County Water District customers in the city of Newark and has supported numerous ACWD programs and initiatives over his many years in public service. He has supported the development of facilities like ACWD's Newark Desalination Facility, that have enhanced water supply and water quality for Newark residents as well as other ACWD customers throughout the Tri-City area. Mr. Nagy has participated in numerous ACWD public engagement events, including serving as a judge in the ACWD student video contests. He's also worked to enhance the availability and effectiveness of geographic information system tools and data, which benefit several Tri-City agencies through his leadership on the Southern Alameda County GIS Authority Board of Directors, along with ACWD. So staff's recommendation is by motion, adopt a resolution recognizing and expressing appreciation to Alan L. Nagy upon his retirement from the City of Newark City Council and for his service to the City of Newark and the Tri-City community.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to make a comment about Mr.?
I think I'll just make a quick comment. Mayor Nagy has always been a great partner to Alameda County Water District. Under his tenure from city council to mayor, we constructed the Newark desalination facility. We expanded the Newark desalination facility. He also supported numerous district projects, including our main replacement project. The cooperation actually led to cost savings for ACWD. He definitely believes in our mission and what we do and helping us further our mission. So a great thank you to Mayor Nagy.
Thank you. Let's just Akbari, we'll get, then on roll over to Director Gunther.
Sure. I'll keep my comments short. To know Newark is to know Mayor Nagy and vice versa. He's been an incredible part of the history of Newark for many years now, and has been a great friend and partner to ACWD. So I wish him well in his retirement, and Newark's got some big shoes to fill there.
Thank you. Director Sethy.
I will say I've really known two mayors or three in my entire lifetime from Newark. One is former ACWD Director Clark Redeker, Dave Smith, and Alan Nagy. And it's been a tremendous privilege for me to serve with him on the Southern Alameda County GIS Joint Power Authority. And I always feel like when I'm in a government meeting with Mayor Nagy, I'm always learning something new. And as Director Huang pointed out, he's been very supportive of various district projects, including the desalination and ecological fishery efforts on Alameda Creek. And I'm wishing him well, and I'm looking forward to going to his recognition dinner next month.
All right, thank you. Director Gunther.
Yeah, apologize for it. I think there's a slight delay. Yeah, I'm going to truly miss Al, like Director Sethy. I've known Al Nagy, Clark Redeker, and Dave Smith. And there's a tremendous amount of years over there in Newark among those three. And I'm going to miss Al. He's always been great to work with, just great to meet, great guy. And I'm going to miss him and wish him all the best of luck in his future and well-being. Thank you, Al.
Thank you. Ironically, no, Al has been a good friend to the district. There was also Jim Valentine, who was the first elected mayor in Newark, who slipped in there as well. But Al and with Dave Smith, which were almost a team for many years, controlled that. Al and Dave were particularly helpful when some 28 years ago, the city of Fremont attempted to take over the Alameda County Water District, where they would have been the provider and purveyor of water to the residents of Newark, which Newark, I think wisely did not support, nor did Union City. But Fremont argued that they would, the developers would have a one-stop shop in the area. They could only had to go to Fremont. So that was fortunately defeated, and we have our district.
And that included taking over USD as well.
Yes, they would do water and sewer services for the Tri-City community out of the City Hall in Fremont. Thank God that did not occur. But Al has, starting with the JCs, became politically involved and possibly with the to my knowledge, the only currently elected official has a major civic structure named after him, which is the new library in Newark, while still serving in office. I found that remarkable, and it's appropriate because he had done such an extraordinary work for the city of Newark. So thank you. We have the resolution. If we could have a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Director Sethy,
Aye.
Akbari,
Aye.
Huang,
Aye.
Gunther,
Aye.
and Weed.
Aye. Thank you. We had spoken earlier about rearranging the calendar and would like to take, we have two items, 5.9 and 5.12.
I think staff proposes to go ahead and address
5.8 first.
5.9 first,
Okay,
and then address 6.3.1
all right,
shortly after 5.9.
okay,
And then we can continue down the agenda.
fine. I'll be abstaining on 5.12. That's why I had it marked.
Right.
So 5.9 is a review of the proposed water-related rates and charges, facilities, connection charges, miscellaneous fees and charges, and help on tap customer assistance programs and setting a public hearing.
Okay, and again, staff, we appreciate your flexibility in moving the agenda items around this evening. We've got a number of time constraints and other spinning plates in the air. And we know that Director Gunther may not be able to remain with us through the end of the meeting. So item 5.9, I'll let our Director of Finance and Administration, John Wunderlich, get us started.
Great. Good evening, members of the board, staff, and public. The district's core mission is to provide a reliable supply of high-quality water at a reasonable price to the communities of Fremont, Newark, and Union City. And in order to ensure the district has sufficient funds to effectively accomplish its mission, we regularly review our actual and projected revenues as compared to costs. Our primary source of revenue, of course, is from water rates. And so accordingly, the commodity rates and service charges are reviewed regularly to ensure they reflect the cost of water service. The district's various other rates and charges are also analyzed periodically and revised to recover the cost of providing the service for which the rate or charge is imposed. Any proposed changes to the district's water-related rates and charges are made publicly available and are reviewed at a public hearing prior to adoption by the board. Based on discussions at 4 board financial workshops, staff has determined that a 4% increase in rate revenue for each of the next 2 years is required based on the comprehensive analysis described in the staff report. The board also considered 1, corresponding increases in the drought surcharges to address the revenue shortfall that results from lower consumption in a board-declared water shortage emergency, which we are currently in, and 2, rates for dedicated fire service lines, also known as private fire service. So this report will be supplemented by a staff presentation, and approval of this item will help the district meet strategic plan goal 3, improve the district's financial stability and transparency. And so I'm going to go ahead and kick off a staff presentation. And so we're going to review a little history of our financial workshops that we conducted, review our key financial planning assumptions and results based on the proposed rate increases. Then we'll review the detailed proposed rates and charges. And then after we complete our review of the water related rates and charges, we'll talk about miscellaneous rates and charges that are proposed for adjustment, as well as proposed updates to facilities connection charges. All right, next slide. And so the first financial workshop this year was our budget workshop back in May. And the financial analyses presented this evening are all built upon the current adopted budget, which was discussed at that workshop. Then in July, August, and September, we held a series of financial workshops focused on rates, during which we talked about our financial planning assumptions. We talked about our budget. We talked about different approaches to rate structure and drought surcharges, as well as our state water project override tax. So we really covered a wide range of financial topics, those workshops. And based on that discussion, staff has prepared a rate proposal for the board's consideration that has a 4% across the board increase to the service charge and commodity charge for each of the next 2 years. And so what we'll be asking the board to do tonight is to set a public hearing for February 9th, 2023, and to authorize staff to send out a Proposition 218 notice consistent with the rates reviewed with the board this evening. All right, next slide. So now I'll go ahead and turn it over to Sydney Elm, our financial analysis supervisor, who will lead the rest of the presentation. And given that much of this is review of what was discussed during the series of workshops, Mr. Elm does plan to move through the material fairly quickly. But of course, if at any point in time there are questions or follow-up, please don't hesitate to stop us, and we'll be happy to respond to any questions. And so with that introduction, I will turn it over to Mr. Elm.
Thank you, Mr. Wunderlich. Good evening, members of the board, members of the public and staff. So as Mr. Wunderlich mentioned, I will dig in a little bit into the detail, but I will be more brief to provide you more time to ask any questions you may have. So I'll start with the there you go. Oops. See, the pointer is working. Oh, it's
There you
working.
go.
Sorry about that. So I'll start with the current assumption that's in the financial plan. I won't go into detail. You've seen this before. All of these, all the items you see here on this slide, we showed this in the rates workshops already. Just wanted to highlight a few items here. Labor and benefits costs consistent with the labor contracts. SFPUC really increased the rate over the last year, effective July 1. That's almost 16%, so 15.9% to be exact. That went into effect. And in the financial plan, we are anticipating a substantial increase in the future from SFPUC. The financial plan includes full funding of our capital program, which includes the added cost for the PFAS treatment. And then the assumed future rate increases remain at 3%. One additional key assumption that's not listed here, and it's new that you haven't seen, is the change in the overhead rate. We've reviewed the updated overhead rate at the Finance Committee last month. So staff reviewed the fringe and overhead rate on an annual basis based on actual costs from prior year and adjust that accordingly as appropriate. As a result of that review, the fringe and overhead rate, the overall rate decreased 6.8% from last year. So that is built into the current model that's consistent with the water rates update and financial plan as well. And you will see that the impact of that in the ending cash balance that you'll see here on the positive direction. So these metric, the first metric here on top is the general fund ending balances. So as you can see here, the district is spending down the reserve from the current year through the planning horizon. At the end of the planning horizon, you see the $5 million projected to be under the reserve target. When we showed this to you during the rates workshop, that number is $10 million below. Because of the change in the overhead rate, this is it's $5 million below target. The projected bill demand is the same. Our long-term projection is 34.2 MGD, or million gallons per day. Now, things may change. So what we'll do, staff will review this as part of the budget process coming up. So coming up very shortly, actually, we're just starting on that right now. Our debt coverage ratio remains strong, well above the target, as you see there. The bottom metric shows the capital improvement program by funding sources. Shaded in green is our PAYGO general fund CIP. That's accounts for about 70% of the total CIP. These two metrics illustrate that the district relies on non-operating revenue and other revenue sources to fund our operating expenditures and to meet our revenue requirement. That's the main takeaway. Next week, we'll review the operating revenues versus operating expenses in more detail at the Finance Committee. So this is our the adopted general fund expenditures for fiscal year 22-23. We're showing this to show the breakdown to different cost center. So the source of supply, operations and maintenance capital projects has account for about 80% of our general fund budget. The 4% proposed rate increase would generate about $5 million in additional revenues. And about half of that would be allocated to water purchase and capital projects, 38% to labor and benefits, and then the other 15% allocated to operations and maintenance. This is show a breakdown of the additional revenue, again, through different cost center. It's interesting looking at different cost center. About 34% of the additional revenue is allocated to labor and benefits. Here's the average water bill comparison. What's added on here that's different from what we showed you. These include the drought surcharge for us. You see $145.07 and $150.90 for the proposed effective date March 1. Other agencies that have effective drought surcharge, they are included in here. So this ranking is based on total, including the surcharges. And again, this shows that even with the proposed 4% increase, we're at the in the bottom third of all the agencies surveyed. Okay, so now we'll get into the proposed rates and charges. I will review the results from the water rates update and financial plans that's completed by our rate consultant, HF&H. They're here tonight. They're available to answer any questions you may have. We have the report for the public viewing in the boardroom. For the average residential customer with a 5/8 and a 3/4 inch meter, the bi-monthly service charge is proposed to increase $2.36 effective March 1, 2023, and $2.45 effective March 1, 2024, as you see on the top chart there. And my bi-monthly meter service charge is based on the meter size, and those are the different proposed charges for each of the meter size. On the consumption commodity rate, it's a proposed increase by about 18 cents per unit, effective March 1, 2023, and 19 cents per unit of consumption effective March 1, 2024 for the inside district, and about 20 cents for the outside district customer, which there's about 20 of them and reside in Hayward or located in Hayward area. And the proposed effective March 1, 2024 is 22 cents for the outside district customer. Again, 18 cents for the inside district for March 1, 2023. Also, the 4% increase also is relevant to the private fire service rates. So here are the proposed rates effective March 1 of 2023 and March 1 of 2024. Again, a customer with a fire service diameter, a small one, a 3/4 inch meter, they would see their bi-monthly bill or charge increase by 30 cents. This slide shows the schedule of the drought surcharges. Currently, the district is in a stage 2 water shortage emergency, and the current rate is 79 cents per unit. So the proposed rate effective March 1, 2023 would be 82 cents per unit and 85 cents effective March 1 of 2024. So that's per unit of consumption. So just a corresponding 4% increase. We're not showing an example of the impact of the drought surcharge. For an average single-family residential customer, the proposed effective date, March 1, 2023 bill would be $137.78. When we add the drought surcharge at a stage 2 rate to that, they would see their bill go up to $150.90. This is assuming they use 16 units of water. If the customers that conserve a 15% level, they would not see their bill go up at all. Now, we acknowledge that some customer cannot conserve anymore. They're very water thrifty. So they would actually see the bill go up. However, since the drought surcharge is built on a consumption per unit consumption, the lower water that you use, the lower you pay, and compared to the higher user would pay more. So this is the impact on total water bill. This is an increase in commodity rate and service charge. So we're looking at that for the proposed effective date, March 1 of 2023. A typical residential customer would see their bill go up $5.32 per bill, or $2.65 per month. The following year, effective March 1, 2024, if rates were approved, they would see their bill go up $5.49 per bill, or $2.74 per month. Now we'll get into the miscellaneous rate and charges. As Mr. Bonalik mentioned, staff reviewed other miscellaneous fees and charges that are in our rate schedule on an annual basis. We want to make sure that the rate and charges that we charge our customers reflects the actual cost of service. And the proposed fees and charges are based on actual data from prior fiscal year. The fees that are not presented to you this evening are not proposed any changes to them. But we only have several changes. They're listed, most of them are listed here. Fire hydrant meter charges, field charge, damage angle stop charge, reconnection charges, inspection, testing of backflow prevention device, and meter installation charges. I won't go into the detail. Again, we reviewed these at the Finance Committee last month. Basically, most of the changes are due to the cost of material and as well as labor. For meter installation charges, the primary reason for the increase is because the installation of meters will be ultrasonic meter now. And currently we replace, or in the past, we replace meter with positive displacement. So going forward, we'd be replacing with ultrasonic meter. There's really one or three proposed new charges that staff is proposing. This relate to meter tampering, related to customer tampering with our AMI meters. So these are new. There's three different charges. One is the investigation. So they'll just go out there and see what's going on. Or the other fees is if it end up in replacement of the endpoint device. And then the third fee is if it end up in meter replacement, replacing the whole meter. Again, the replaced meter would be ultrasonic meter. And just to give you some numbers, as of today, there are 72 tamper notification in Beacon. So we show 72 notification of tampering. Of those 72, we investigated 63 of them. And then of the 63 that we investigated, we believe 26 are due to customer tampering. So there's different kinds of tampering that's taking place. So we thought it would be appropriate to propose these new fees and add them to the rate and fee schedule. All right, so our next section is the facility connection charges. As you recall, the board approved the updates to the facility connection charges in 2019 and added the 5-year phase-in for the equity buy-in component. The 5th year of the phase-in is scheduled to go into effect May 1, 2023. You also authorized that the FCC be adjusted annually based on the CCI index from July to July. So the effective May 1 proposed fee, the inflationary increase based on ENR CCI is 13.65%. Show here the past CCI index, you can see it's increased. It has increased dramatically to 13.65%. So there's a lot of numbers in the next few slides, but really this is residential customer or residential connection. The incremental portion and the equity buy-in. You got the single family, multifamily, and the dorm. So this is the base, what we call the base fiscal year 2019. As you notice, equity buy-in portion is phased in over 5 years. So you already see the incremental increase. This did not include inflationary. So what you authorize is that we would increase these base charges based on the changes in ENR CCI index, and that's compounded. So here's the base for the non-residential connection for 3/4 inch meter to 2-inch meter. And here's the non-residential connection for the larger meter. So this is what we call the base in 2019, based on the study completed by Raftelis. So we're in our 5th year at the end of our the life of that study. So we are in the process of engaging our rate consultant, HF&H, to review the study this spring. Here's the residential connection phased in. So they shaded fiscal year 2023, a proposed effective date May 1. That would be effective May 1, 2023 for different residential. Then here's the non-residential for the 3/4 inch to 2-inch, and then the 3-inch to the 8-inch. Finance, we discussed at Finance Committee, and Finance Committee asked to update our survey or comparison to with other agencies. Look at their development charges. They call it different things. So here's the 4 agencies that we in the past compared ourselves to. As you can see, ACWD, even with the proposed facility connection charges, we're well lower than comparative agency. East Bay Mud did lower their capacity charges from a few years ago, but they're still higher than us. Contra Costa Water District, CCWD, they're about 3 times as more expensive. You want to develop there. Livermore and Dublin San Ramon Services District, their fees include Zone 7 capacity charges, and they're about 3.5 times higher than ACWD's. The SRSD is about 4.5 times, more than 4.5 times compared to ACWD's proposed. This is for single family residential. Non-residential 2-inch meter, very similar, just higher fees. But the comparison is very dramatic. All right, so next up, we have a recommendation for you this evening. Set February 9th, 2023 at 6 p.m. That's the date and time for a public hearing for consideration of the proposed revision to the district's water-related rates and charges, and authorize staff to mail notifications to all property owners in the district, customers who are directly responsible for paying the water bill, and all other mailing addresses in the district of the proposed revisions to water-related rates and charges and public hearings details. As for next step, December 27 would be the deadline to mail Proposition 218 notice, should you approve this evening. We're targeting to mail them out December 23rd. Staff would plan to have 2 community meetings, one in person, one would be virtual via Zoom in January. And if approved, February 9th would be the public hearing. And then the effective dates of the fees are March 1, 2023 or May 1, 2023. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Let me first ask Director Gunther, who indicated he may have to leave at some point, if he had any comments on this or questions.
No, thank you. I should be able to make it through this whole session for this portion anyway, this item. We've gone through this a lot over the last few months. And while I'm not thrilled 4%, but then again, 4% in the present environment that we're living is pretty darn good, I think. I think the staff's done an excellent job trying to keep the costs down, particularly because we have the PFAS pilot plant here involved in this cost. So I'd like to say good job to the staff for trying to do this. Everybody's in the same boat and costs are going up dramatically. I think we're doing a pretty good job trying to limit that. Certainly disappointing that we have to raise the rate, but I do support it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there any member of the public that wishes to address this item? Yes.
Yeah, this is Ken Nishimura. My address is on a matter of record at the district. This is really more of a question related to the proposal to add a tampering charge. I'm curious to know what constitutes tampering, and if a customer was just to open the meter to see if there was a leak, just read the number, would that constitute tampering? And because there are people that are going to do that, because that's the way that we've been told to with positive displacement meters to look for leaks is, you turn off all the taps, open the meter and look to see if the needle moves.
So, do you want me to respond to that?
Is there someone, do you feel best just to answer that question?
Sure.
Yeah, we can certainly
Sure.
address that. And I do see that Mr. Wunderlich's got his hands up. So first I want to make sure, Mr. Wunderlich, are you attempting to answer that question, or do you have another item
No,
you want to add?
I felt like perhaps I'm best equipped to answer that question. With the customer service group that manages those processes being within my department. So no, it's simply lifting up a meter lid is not going to result in a tampering situation. And typically you'd be looking at some sort of proactive action by a customer to separate an endpoint. That's not something that would just happen accidentally by opening a meter box. I believe in one or two even more extreme situations we've seen where it appears a customer has taken some sort of wire cutters and actually, kind of cut wires that are connecting things together. So yeah, it's not something that would just happen accidentally from opening a meter box.
Let me follow on. How many tampering incidents do we encounter in the course of a year at ACWD?
Yeah,
I was up to day 72.
Yeah, so this is very unique to AMI. And it's basically when the customer takes an action that prevents us from receiving the data from the meter. And so now we have to send a district employee out to the location. So as Mr. Aum noted, we've had 72 so far. Not all of those showed evidence of a deliberate customer tamper. So we would not charge the fee in every instance unless we were convinced that a customer had proactively tampered. And at this point, approximately a little over a quarter of district customers have AMI meters.
So the total number that we would of tampering incidents we've encountered so far with the quarter, do we have any feel for because this is a novel issue brought to the board and to our experience?
Yeah, so I think once every customer is on AMI, I wouldn't expect this to happen a lot, but it may happen a couple hundred times a year, potentially. But I think also as the customer base becomes more educated and acquainted with having an AMI meter, then maybe it would also happen less.
Okay, so we're well, I can say my comments to the end, but it strikes me there's some speculation that this might become an issue, but does not become an issue to date.
Not a significant issue, but again, we have seen some clear instances of customers tampering with the meter, and that does create a need to replace a part of the meter or the meter in itself, and certainly creates a need to send a district employee out to the location.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we also have a Mr. Abreu wishes to speak, address the board. Mr. Abreu.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I've got a lot of problems and questions. Well, not questions, problems with misgivings about what you're doing here. Let's do the AMI meters. You know, if you're going to report these numbers instead of just saying, oh, you know, we're going to have a certain number of events per year, you would report this as a Poisson event rate. You know, go back and learn some statistics. You know, you've got how many events per meter or per 10,000 meters per year. Okay. And it's of course stochastically randomly distributed on a Poisson event rate, you know, and just give us some data here. You know, we're just throwing out numbers and nobody knows if it's a high number or a low number because you haven't ratioed it to the amount of meters you have in the field. If one meter has been out there for 2 months and got tampered, another one's been out there for 26 months and it's been tampered, you know, and you got to account for all of those numbers. And then the rate schedule. There are no lifeline tiered rates. That's bad. We need a tiered rate for people can get 4 units or 5 units or 6 units per month per water I said per month, not per bi-monthly. Okay, I said per month. So for their families or for their households, and everybody can get a little bit of water at a lower rate. And then did you notice that the development connection fees here are 3 or 4 times lower than any other comparable agency? That's a scandal. That's not something to be happy about. That's something to start investigating what's wrong. You know, you need to, how can they hook up? Are they using this as a milk cow to get a lot of money? Maybe you should do the same. What do they know that that you don't know? This is, oh, and then finally, if you look at that schedule that you have for events, you're saying that we're now at the 15% conservation level and you have raised the rates by a certain amount. Well, if you do a little bit of math, go over to look up, go hire some economists to do something called the you know, elasticity of demand for water. You'll find out that when you raise the rates that much, you would expect to see about a 9% drop in consumption, and that's roughly what you're seeing now. You've been overall, not last month, but you know, overall over the last, you've been having a 9% drop in consumption in line with the amount that you raised. So that's on the left-hand side where you say, oh, we're asking for 15%. Well, when you get to be asking for 50% conservation and you run a model, you know, a mathematical model through your economic, you know, formula, you're going to find out that you're not going to get 50% conservation. You're going to get closer to 33% conservation. And that's a big planning error. That's a very substantial planning error. When you ask for a certain level of conservation, you should be able to expect to see it. And when you're not getting it, of course, we're not getting it right now. And the reason we're not all, I'm not up in arms about it is because nobody else is either. East Bay Mud isn't doing much better than you are. Zone 7 isn't doing that much better. Nobody is doing that much better than ACWD. So, you know, we're in line with our peer group and everything is fine, but that chart doesn't work because we're not getting 15% conservation. We're getting about 10% conservation right now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, if there's no other, I see no other hands raised, so let's bring this then back to the board. Dr. Huang?
Just a quick comment. Thank you for the presentation. It's very fast and concise. It's a good summary of the many workshops and many topics that we have discussed extensively. So thank you.
I originally did have some questions around the new fees that were being introduced, but I think those were all answered by Mr. Wunderlich. The only other question that I had, I know generally over the last 6 years since we've introduced the Help on Tap program, anytime we've looked to raise rates, we've had an incremental increase in the amount of help that we provide the folks who are involved in the Help on Tap program. Are we looking to bring that to the board in addition to this? Because I know that it was listed in the agenda, but I don't recall it in the presentation.
Yeah, I believe there's a plan to bring back to the board, and I'll defer to Mr. Wonderlich to see if he has anything to add.
Yeah, that's that topic is going to be on the agenda for the Finance Committee meeting next week. And then based on feedback from the committee, I think we'll bring a presentation to the board in January, and then would consider, based on feedback from the full board in January, updates to that program at the same time as rates are on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to confirm that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. OM, I want to say this for public benefit because a lot of people think this is, we're being hit with a lot of information here to make a decision. But the fact is that we had a number of workshops this summer and fall. The staff did a very good job of educating the board and public in those meetings. The information was comprehensive. You've grouped everything very nicely here in a good synopsis. And so I compliment the staff on a lot of hard work that went in over several months. So this will guide us in our rates for the next 2 years. I do have one comment and one follow-up question to the meter tampering. So if we go to slide 8, where we have operating revenues versus operating expenses, including depreciation and amortization. I think you've heard me say this before, but following the district for many years in the 2000s, we got away from covering our operating expenses, including depreciation and amortization, with our own operating revenues. And I think that best business practices are to cover that. So we're running into a little bit of a deficit here, but I recognize we have pretty strong non-revenue, non-operating revenue coming in as well to cover that. And it took us a few years going into the 2010s to actually get to that level of covering everything. Now we're receding a little bit back. So I think because we're in a drought, revenues are kind of flat. We really have to control our costs as a district if we're going to avoid these kind of deficits here. You've heard me say it before. It's not the first time. So just want to note that. And then on back to the tampering on the meters. Are we seeing a higher incident of meter tampering with the newly installed AMI meters, ultrasonic meters?
I believe so. Because this tampering is related to AMI, and I believe so. Again, I would like to see if Mr. Wonderlich has something to add to that.
Yeah.
So we've seen an increase from the positive displacement meters that we had in the past.
Yeah, so meter tampering is very unique to the AMI meters because, in the past, if somebody was tampering with the positive displacement meter, it was maybe more in the form of if their service had been disconnected, that they went and they messed with the angle stop or things like that to reconnect their service, even though we had disconnected. And that didn't happen very often and only applied to limited accounts. But now with the AMI meters, we rely on certain parts of the meter being intact so that the meter can communicate data through us to us through the cellular network. And so it is a very unique situation to the AMI meter.
Are other districts experiencing the same thing too? Is this kind of an industry norm?
Yeah, no, it definitely happens in other areas. And I I can't give you great data on how our experience compares to others. And I would think that, as our customers get some more experience and we get some more experience with this, I would certainly hope that the numbers come down. They are a small percentage, and, we don't want to use this to be heavy-handed. We want to work with our customers, but it's more so that staff has a tool when we have customers where maybe there are repeated call outs or, really clear evidence that they've taken pretty significant steps like cutting a wire or something like that.
I see. Okay. So that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I have long argued that we have a dysfunctional rate structure, one that does not match variable cost to variable income and fixed cost to fixed income. It's inverted, more than inverted. As a result, we need staged rates to make up for the wild fluctuations we encounter. So I've lost that argument to date. It's not the issue before us today. I would note that life would be so much more rational if we had a rational rate structure. I don't recall meter tampering being an issue raised when we were approving the AMI program. $50 million is one of the interests, but it's a marginal issue. But we also noted that our revenues will increase by, our amount of revenue water will increase by 5% when we go to AMI over the next year or so, as opposed to the prior. I don't see any of that reflected in this rate structure and rate study. On the dorm rate, which we have very few dorms in this community, but it was noted at the time when City of Fremont changed their zoning criteria to no longer have a minimum number or account units per acre, but rather to change it to a floor area ratio and allow them to put as many units into a new development, particularly in their transit-oriented developments, as they could. To which the district responded, we do have a dorm rate. So with the new units that the city is building, which they're very small apartments, one was a British developer that was looking at in the hundreds of square feet rather than the units, that maybe we may wish to look at somehow that might play. We're looking at $2,500 an acre foot for our water. And the bulk of that, much of that water is used for irrigation. I would hope that we would look for means that we could find the ability to tap directly into our groundwater reservoir at $500 an acre foot and make them far more efficient use, that we do not necessarily need treated water for non-potable uses. And that would be a design structure, and we've done some pilot programs have been conceptualized, but we've not yet proposed that. So for fire flows and sanitary flows, our primary mission, we don't need $2,500 an acre foot water. Still have the ag portion and municipal recreation, which is $8 an acre foot, which is essentially free water. If we were to do a zero tier and not charge the first 2 units of water, 50 gallons a day for everyone, particularly if the commodity charge was the less than 1/4 rather than the 60 some percent or 70 some percent that it is today, we could afford it. And that would eliminate the need to administer a help on tap program. Many people who are renters would never see a water bill. So there's some opportunities that we've not realized, but it'll be, as I've learned, it's a long, slow, tedious process to try and develop a sense to overcome the effect of the environmental community, which had best management practices. We call the Environmental Defense Fund the Opus Dei of the water world, because they believe to be a true believer, you have to inflict pain and suffering on the customer, and therefore you'll get conservation. I think we've seen from our own experiences that's not true. We had no mandatory enforcements in the last drought. We've had none in this drought. Only 4 people were notified that of their consumption this time around, and each replied. So we have 100% compliance. we don't need to enforce it through draconian rate structures. So that would, and also we're looking at 34 MGD going out into the foreseeable future. Our capacity is 90 MGD. We're running less than 40% of our capacity and foresee ourselves into the planning future of running less than 40% of our capacity. It gives us a lot of flexibility. We don't have to really look at water supply systems such as Los Vaqueros and other issues to meet that need. And yet we have $100 million proposed for Los Vaqueros. We need to sit back and do a more rational planning. And but that does not impact the proposal to send to the rate structure for this next year. Thank you. Is there any other comments from the board? Do we need an action on this, or do we merely submit it to the process?
Yes, we are asking, we'll switch over to the staff recommendation slide here, number 36 on this presentation. And so here is staff's recommendation to set February 9, 2023 at 6 p.m. as our public hearing date and time to consider those revisions to the district's water related rates and charges, and then authorize staff to mail those Proposition 218 notifications to all property owners in the district, customers who are directly responsible for paying the water bill, and all other mailing addresses in the district of the proposed revisions to water related rates and charges and the details of the public hearings.
All right, do we have a motion to that effect?
I'll make the motion to take staff's recommendation.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any other comment? There being none, roll call, please.
Director Sethy,
Aye.
Akbari,
Aye.
Gunther,
Aye.
Huang,
Aye.
and Weed.
Aye. All right, we have people have waited patiently for us, so let us
3.1.
right.
So yes, so
6.3.1 is the state legislative year-end report from JGC Consulting. This was under staff presentations, but we have a consultant online, so let us hear from our consultant.
yeah, and again, I thank you for your flexibility here and for the public for following along with us. So yes, it has been a very, very busy legislative year, and we've kept our legislative consultants, Jonathan Clay and Aaron Gilbert from JGC Consultants, really, really busy. And so as is customary, we wanted to have an opportunity for them to share kind of a recap of this last year with the board as we do normally in December. The LICA committee gets more routine and more granular updates fairly regularly, about once a month. But this is an opportunity for Jonathan and Aaron to share more with the full board. So I'll turn it over to you all.
Great. Thank you very much. Good evening, directors. Jonathan Clay with JGC here with Aaron Gilbert. I think what I'll say is looking back at this year, it was a very interesting legislative year, just from the fact that we started with a lot of COVID restrictions and kind of ended with almost nothing, back to the old ways. And then fast forward to today, or to this week on December 5th, on Monday, the legislature came back. And, given what we saw in terms of the number of people in floor session and a lot of the different events afterwards, I think you're going to see the legislature coming back to operating the way it had previously operated. I'm going to kind of really focus on looking ahead, because I think there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff happening this upcoming year. First and foremost, we started a new 2-year session on this past Monday. The district has 2 new legislators, Assembly Member Liz Ortega, and then Senator, and I'm going to butcher this name, Wu Han Bi. I think I am probably not saying that correct. Aaron and I have already started reaching out to those offices to start trying to set up meetings, get in to talk to them and educate them about the issues that are important to the district. That's just kind of a subset of, when you take a look at the bigger legislative change, you had roughly 30 new members come in this year. And a lot of that was driven by redistricting, new districts. A lot of members were going to be terming out in 2 years. And I think there was a calculus made that folks decided they didn't want to have to run again for just one more term in a brand new district. So we're going to be seeing lots of change with new members. We have also new leadership coming in the assembly over this next year. It's made the news quite a bit, but there's been a deal between current Speaker Rendon and soon to be Speaker Rivas for a transition of power in the assembly, at least next June. I always like to say it's a long ways till June, so you never know, but it does seem like this is a pretty firm transition. What's going to come along with that as well is you're going to see a lot of, I think, committee chairmanship change in the middle of the year, which will, prove to be interesting and dynamic to the legislative process. Because if you have one chair at the beginning of the year going one direction, and then you have a new chair come in June looking at a whole nother host of bills going a different direction, it's going to create some chaos, I think. The other thing I'll say is, in terms of from the district's perspective, I think water is going to be a big issue. And I think a lot of it's going to, again, we'll see things coming up that revolve around the continued drought conditions, water rights. There's been some interesting articles in Cal Matters and the SACB over some water districts that ignored curtailment orders by the state water board. So I think we'll see legislation on that front. We've already seen bills introduced related to water storage. So I think you're going to see a lot of things happening on water. Now, couple that with the budget. It's really fascinating to know, just think about, we had $100 billion surplus in this budget year, and we're now, the legislative analyst is projecting we're going to have a $25 billion deficit this next year. I'm going to guess that deficit's the floor, not the ceiling. And a little factoid, it's roughly 1% of the state's taxpayers support between 40 and 50% of the state's total budget. And a lot of that's all driven by capital gains. So as the stock markets go, so does the state's budget. And so I think that's, if the stock markets continue to kind of go up and down or continue down, we're going to see definitely some more volatility in our budget. I bring that all up because there were a lot of investments made over the last 2 budget surpluses in water infrastructure, water projects, grant programs, etc. Though that money was spread out over multiple years and it's general fund money. And so I would not be surprised to see money getting pulled back from those programs that hasn't been already allocated or encumbered, so to speak, to help with trying to cover this 25 billion plus budget deficit. So I just, as you look at this upcoming year ahead, I just want to kind of put that in the back of your minds to think about. Again, I think going back to the legislative process itself, we're guessing we're not going to have any of the COVID restrictions that we saw in this last year, especially at the beginning of the year. We don't know, but we're guessing we're not going to see the telephone call-in ability for hearings. It's provided amazing access to the public to be able to participate in the process, but it's also been very disruptive to the legislative process. So it'll be interesting to kind of just see how that plays out. Finally, and this is just more, we always like to kind of share kind of some of the fun things that are going on in Sacramento. Many of you probably have been aware that there's been a major reconstruction project going on at the state capitol. What is technically the new side of the Capitol is being torn down, and that new from 1950, and they're going to rebuild it. Well, it turns out the state lost a lawsuit challenging them on their CEQA adequacy, and they're now going to have to go back and redo portions of their CEQA document because they didn't comply with notification and some of the other rules of CEQA. So even the legislature and the state aren't immune from being tripped up by CEQA. And, I think they were saying 5 to 7 years to get this project done. Aaron and I both joked that we may not see this done before either of us decide to retire. So anyways, I'll turn it over to Aaron to see if there's anything that I may have missed, but I know you guys are got a long board meeting tonight, and so I think we'll try and wrap our portion of this up.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. I don't have much to add, just to say thank you to the board members that have been on LICA for the last year, and to Shireen and Ed. It's always been a pleasure working with all of you, and we look forward to the next year doing that again.
And that concludes our report.
Thank you. Is there any questions from members of the board? There being none, thank you very much for your service.
I just make
Oh, please, okay,
I was going
please.
to make a quick comment. I just wanted to express my appreciation to Jonathan and Aaron. I've sat on like a committee with Director Huang for the last year, and the discussions we have there are fascinating and very eye-opening. And I appreciated that I got to have a little chat with Jonathan at the Aqua conference last week as well. Aaron, if you were there, I might have missed you, but hoping that we can meet in person at some point as well. But thank you to you both.
Thank you very much.
I was just going to add a comment. Jonathan, I'm sure you heard it well at the Aqua conference that rate affordability and people being able to afford their water bills is going to come back to the legislature. SB 222 from Dodd is going to resurface in some other life form here. And of particular interest, I think, to our water district are the forthcoming regulations for water use efficiency, whether it's indoor or outdoor or both. So those are things to stay on top of. And I'm sure you will. You're doing a good job for us.
Appreciate that. No, most definitely. Yeah, the water use efficiency, especially setting those targets, is I think going to be a fairly controversial process. And then couple that, I think some of the fights over water rights are really going to, for lack of a better way to describe it, suck the oxygen out of the room.
Thank you. And I'd note that Director Sethy has taken a lead role with the Aqua, trying to get some legislative reform on the ability to bill on property taxes, and hopefully can share that information with you. And they're now struggling to get it out of Aqua on with a position for the state legislature.
Yes, that's correct. And without belaboring that issue here, Jonathan, I'd be happy to discuss with you the progress that's been made in Aqua this past year and where we're headed, trying to get a bill introduced to the assembly. We can do that offline.
Okay.
Most definitely.
Thank you. And thank you very much. Thank you again for your services.
Thank you.
All right. Our next would be
Director Weed. Yeah, this is Jim Gunther, Director. Yes. I'm gonna have to drop off.
I'm sorry, Jim. You're still with us.
I wanted to stay
outside out of mind. We saw a different picture there.
I wanted to see through I had to drop off the picture periodically, but I stayed through. I'm going to have to drop off here now. And I do appreciate everybody's patience tonight.
Did you have a question or comment?
No. I just want to let everybody know I'm dropping off. So thank you so much. Good evening. Have a good night.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day. All right. It's 3 hours difference, I believe. Right. Let us then move on then to item 5.8, which is the presentation of the Alameda County Water District audited financial statements for fiscal year 2021-22. And our auditor has been patiently waiting.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
We now return to our regular scheduled programming and appreciate the patience of those involved in this item. So I'll quickly turn it over to our Director of Finance and Administration, Mr. Wunderlich.
Great, thank you, Mr. Stevenson. So the district prepares an annual comprehensive financial report each year that is comprised of an introduction with an overview of the district and recent accomplishments, management's analysis of the financial statements themselves, along with related notes, and statistical and historical information about the district. The PUN Group is the district's auditor and recently completed its audit of the district's financial statements for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2022, and issued an unmodified opinion. That is the highest level opinion that can be provided. The auditor presented the results to the Finance Committee on November 15th, 2022. And Vanessa Burke, a partner with the Pun Group, is here to provide a supplemental presentation this evening. And Mariana Grajeda, the district's accounting and treasury manager, will also participate in that presentation. And so acceptance of the annual comprehensive financial report will help the district meet the district strategic plan goal 3.3, promote financial transparency. And so with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Burke and Ms. Grajeda.
Thank you, Mr. Wunderlich, and good evening, directors, members of the public, and staff. We will be presenting the annual comprehensive financial report and the audit results for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2022. For tonight's presentation, we will go over the financial overview of the annual comprehensive report, the scope of work, and then the audit results. And then we will leave at the end open for questions. Next slide. I will start with the statement of net position. And this statement presents the district's assets, liabilities, deferred outflows, inflows, and the net position at a point in time. In this case, it's at June 30, 2022 and 2021. This that you see on your screen is a condensed view, but for details, you can refer to pages 13 and 14 of the annual comprehensive financial statements. I will provide an explanation of the biggest changes from last year. So to start, non-current assets, which is comprised of projects under construction and projects completed during the year and transferred to fixed assets. We see an increase of $22.6 million as compared to last year. This is due to increase in expense for projects under construction, such as the Rubber Dam Fish Ladder Project, the Shin Pond Fish Screen Project, and the Advanced Metering Infrastructure Project. Moving down to current liabilities, we see a decrease in this line item, and the main reason for the decrease is due to a prior period adjustment, a decrease in customer deposits due to the closing of customer and developer jobs, and a decrease in accrued invoices. These accrued invoices are invoices that were outstanding at the end of the year, but they were paid in the current fiscal year. Moving down to non-current liabilities, we see a decrease in net pension liability. A decrease in this line item was basically due to net pension liability of $40.8 million and net OPEB liability of $7.8 million. And this is due to the GASB statement 68 and 75, which are require us to do year-end adjustments for financial reporting purposes. This decreases was due to the investment income that was received from CalPERS and the surplus in prior year. The decrease was offset by an increase in long-term debt of $5.7 million, and it was due to the issuance of the 2022 water system revenue bonds. Deferred inflows, it's, you know, the change in this is similar to the non-current liabilities, and is due to the GASB 68 statement and GASB 75 statement, year-end adjustments for pension and OPEB. And again, this is due to the investment income from CalPERS and surplus, which had a 21.3 investment income last year. This amount is deferred and will amortize over 5 years as required by the statement. So these changes caused the net increase in assets and decrease in liability, resulted in a change in net position of $45.2 million for the current fiscal year. Next page. The next statement that I'm going to discuss is a statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in net position. This statement shows the results of the district's operations for the fiscal year 2021-2022. It provides the revenue generated and expenses incurred for a single year, which resulted in the change in net position of $45.2 million, as I previously mentioned. This is a statement that we presented during the finance committee meetings, but this is a condensed view for the whole year. And again, for details of this statement, look at page 15 of the annual comprehensive report. So for this, the items that I want to touch base on is the operating revenue. So operating revenue increased from prior years mainly due to additional facility connections charges that were received for increased construction in the service area. In addition, there was also revenue recognized for water system extension projects. So for operating expenses, the decrease in this line item is due to general administrative expenses, a decrease of 13.9 million. And this is due to the recognition of the investment income that I discussed previously related to the GASB 68 and 75 year-end adjustments. Non-operating revenue decreased to an unrealized loss of 7.7 million because of the decrease in the fair market value of investments on paper as result of the year-end adjustments that we have to do for the financial presentation purposes. Capital contributions decreased from last year due to less grant revenue received for the year for the various projects the district has currently ongoing. The item that I wanted to point out is the prior period adjustment, which I mentioned. This is basically a restatement of prior year's report, and this is due to an adjustment to the workers' comp liability and also to the implementation of GASB 87, which is related to the reporting of leases, which require us to restate prior year's statement. Next page. The last statement that I want to cover before I turn it over to Mrs. Burke for the audit results is the statement of cash flows. This statement presents information about cash receipts and payments and the net change in cash from operations, investing, and financing activities. The line item that I want to point out for this is the cash used in capital and related financing activities. This includes cash used for capital related purposes, and the change from prior year is due to net cash received of 8.3 million from the 2022 bond issuance that the district did on April 1st of 2022, and also combined with a decrease in cash used for the acquisition of capital assets. So the combination of this resulted in a net change in cash of 7.5 million for the year, which in plain words, it just means that the cash received for the year was $7.5 million higher than the cash used. So with that, I will turn it over to Mrs. Burke, who will be providing the results of the audit.
Thanks, Ms. Grajeda, and thank you, Chairman, members of the board, staff, and the community here on this call. I am Vanessa Burke. I'm the engagement partner. Our first year that we did your audit was in fiscal year 2019. So this is our fourth audit report before you. It's a pleasure. I think I've not stood in your chambers because very shortly after, as we were starting all of this, COVID hit. And so it's really good to be here today. I feel like it's all getting past us and only half of you are wearing masks today. So anyway, just briefly, I wanted to go over our scope of work for this audit. We have presented all of this in detail at the Finance Committee back in November. But for purposes of those who weren't at that meeting, we really cover 4 areas in your audits or other attestation engagements. The first column is your financial statement audit. That's really what's the bulk of the weight in your agenda package today and takes up around 200 pages of it. The other are an examination engagement on your debt compliance for your 2 bond issuances. The agreed upon procedure, which is an appropriation limit agreed upon procedure that we do mandated by the state to ensure that your spending is within that limit. And then the newest column is over on the right-hand side is we conducted a single audit under uniform guidance this year, which we've not done in past years. And that's really driven by the fact that you've expended more than $750,000 in what's considered federal revenue or federal revenue passed through a state agency. In your case, you received money related to the augmentation of utility bills from the state of California that was passed through for the arrearage payment program. And so that is covered under the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds program. We're working on finalizing that report with staff. It's new to have to be subject to single audit here. It has happened before. I've seen it in some of your past years, but it is not that common that it happens at the water district. So we will be, we finalized that report and it's in here now. I think it was drafted at the audit committee. Next slide. As mentioned earlier by John, we issued you an unmodified opinion. We included an emphasis of a matter paragraph in there. I've got a slide on that next. I'll describe what those are. Unmodified opinion is, in lay term, a clean opinion, meaning we did not modify it. There's nothing higher that you can receive than that. That's the best you can get. It's not really a score, but it is what we issue when things are appropriate and reasonable. It really, the things that are underneath that main first bullet is what we look at in order to determine that you should receive an unmodified opinion. And that's that your significant accounting, your policies, your significant accounting policies have been consistently applied year over year. So you're not changing policies to change results. Your estimates are reasonable. We can look at those estimates and we can validate that they appear reasonable based on trends or other factors that we look at as part of our audit. Disclosures that are in these financial statements are fair and fairly presented and properly reflect the numbers that are in the financial statements and really tell the story of the financial situation of the district. The last bullet is because you're subject to federal this year with the grant and you're a yellow book audit, we do ensure that you comply in all material respects with the compliance requirements that could have a direct and material effect on your major federal program. So with that said, that is the financial statements in a nutshell. So congratulations to your finance team. They go through quite the rigor from our audit team supporting hundreds of document requests electronically and otherwise. So as well as many of the folks in each of your departments that we have to meet with. On the examination engagement, the debt compliance report, we did not have any exceptions to testing the covenants related to your debt. And you received an unmodified opinion on that. On the GAN limit, we performed the certain specific agreed upon procedures related to the appropriation limit for fiscal year 2023. That's the one you adopt as part of your budget at the end of the year. And there are no exceptions to those agreed upon procedures. We also issued and included in your packet is a report on internal controls and compliance as required under government auditing standards. If we had identified what we deem to be significant deficiencies and or material weaknesses related to financial reporting, we would bring those to your attention in that report. That report is actually included as part of the single audit. This year, it's a separate letter if you don't have a single audit. So in past years, you just received a single letter. We did not have any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal controls that we identified as a result of our testing. Had there been, you would have seen it in that report, or we would be talking with you about it today. Other matters, we always communicate other matters with management during the process of the audit of ways to improve operations and things like that. Not received any resistance to those suggestions, and many of those are accepted very openly by staff. So we really appreciate that relationship with them. The two items that I wanted to bring to your attention that are in the audit opinion is the emphasis of the matter paragraph. That resulted in a prior period adjustment to the beginning net position as of July 1 of 21. That was restated to reflect these. This was related to rate adjustments within the workers' comp area, and you can see those amounts there. The second is the implementation of GASB 87, which is the lease accounting standards. and that lease accounting had an impact on your financial statements by bringing lease receivables onto the books of the water district. So you are a lessor in some instances, and you're also a lessee in some instances. And so that standard requires bringing that activity onto the books. The GASB met and decided that those assets were worthwhile to bring on, as well as those liabilities. So with that, we just point that out as an emphasis. It doesn't change the audit opinion. Neither of those make us modify it. The data was there to audit that transaction for the leases. Next slide. And with that, that completes my prepared remarks, and I'll turn it back over to the board to entertain any questions you might have.
Mr. Gunther, I believe, has left. So Director Huang.
No questions, but great job, finance team.
Likewise, no questions. I'll just make a quick comment that I think this reflects a lot of the work that we've been doing to be as transparent as possible for our customers and provide as much detail to them as possible about how we're allocating their rates. And so I appreciate the work that you put in as part of this audit program as well, and appreciate the tremendous amount of work that our finance team put into this. Thank you.
I was trying to be careful tonight by wearing a mask, but now it broke. And it's brand new. Well, there that goes. So thank you for all the work on putting together the CAFR. One question I have as the auditor is, are there any forthcoming GASB rules that we should be aware of that are new that will impact our district?
So we do report, and it's actually included in note 1. You all have that hopefully in front of you. Upcoming new GASB statements. So I don't know if you want to turn to page 134 of your packets. So those are out there. One is conduit debt obligations, GASB 91. Staff is again evaluating the implementation of each of these because they're upcoming. You currently, in all intents and purposes, are not a conduit issuer of debt. So your name's not on there issuing debt for other agencies. Highly unlikely if that would have a material impact to you as an organization. The most exciting one, I think, if you can consider GASB's exciting, is the next one, which is GASB 94, and that's public, private and public-private partnerships. So depending upon if you've entered into any arrangements related to public-private or public-public partnerships or availability payment arrangements, that could possibly have an impact. The other exciting one is GASB statement number 96. If you can believe it, GASB is actually starting to look at subscription-based or software as a service information technology arrangements and requiring that to be capitalized as part of the district's financial statements. So that likely you have some software as a service within this organization could have a potential impact on your financial statement for any subscription-based or right to use subscription-based intangible assets, which we're in the heart of the Silicon Valley. So we all know what those are generally.
The venture capital community is not thrilled with that.
With the standard for government?
For capitalizing software as a service.
Correct.
Because it really impacts the financials of companies that are almost entirely dependent upon that revenue. And it affects the stock options and everything else that's going on in the organization.
I know.
Okay.
And
So
unfortunately, we don't write the rules, but we have to follow the rules. I would encourage everybody, when the standard setting bodies are issuing government accounting standards or even financial accounting standards, the FASB or the GASB, to read them, go to the public hearings or write comment letters, because I went to one recently and testified at the hearing, and there's nobody in the room and they only get 40 letters at max. So we just need more engagement at that standard setters body meetings, and often they're doing them by Zoom now, and so there could be more participation and more feedback on the standards.
I've spent my career in Silicon Valley, and when you sell a license for software as a service, this is my opinion, it's been a license to steal. And now the government's going to crack down on that.
Yeah.
That's what's happening. So I have a question for our staff. We have a partnership arrangement for our solar project,
Yes.
right? So is that going to be impacted in how we
In how we.
report our capital investment and everything else?
Well, I'll certainly ask our finance staff to answer that. As you recall, we're not the owners of the equipment under that arrangement, right?
Right.
So how that would be reflected in our books, I'd have to ping staff on that.
But that is a public-private partnership.
It could be subject to the rules, so we'll take a look at that. That'll happen this next year when we start working on it. But part of the fact that we put this in the financial statements is to alert everybody that these are things that management is looking at. We work on it during the planning phase, well before we even get into our audit starting for next year. So
Yeah, okay.
that'd be a good one it's a solar project.
I have a couple of comments which are more general to the presentation that the previous presentation that was made. So these are just some observations for our board and staff that where I get a little concerned. Our net position, if you go back and look at it, was up 8.3%. And if you go back a few years, it's been going up quite steadily. And it makes me nervous because we are making our capital contributions or basing our CIP on getting a certain amount of work done. And we're not spending our money. At the end of October on our financial statements, we had only spent 9% of forecast, and that's 1/3 of the way into the year. Here we are finishing December, halfway through the year. We're nowhere near close to what the board approved for projects that we had planned. And I'm not trying to beat up on staff here, but when we make commitments to the public and then we set our rates accordingly to get the CIP projects done, it's not good when those funds are not being spent and then they're sitting in our investment accounts earning money. It's not, like I've said before in the past, we're not meant to be a bank for the public. So that really concerns me among all of the financial issues that we're dealing with. At the same time, as I noted in the last couple of finance committee meetings, we're doing quite well as a district, considering we're going through a drought. And when I compare our CAFR or financial statements with other recent CAFRs for 21, 22, we are being managed very well financially in that sense. And our stage rate is providing us with enough revenue that revenue is actually flat compared to when we did not have stage rates in effect. But anyway, my last comment is I've always found it desirable to get a CAFR out within 90 days of the close of the fiscal year. That's the way the corporate world works. And I would hope that in the future we can get closer to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for your presentation. I would hope going forward that we would in future audits, so we will structure a meeting with board members. Last year, only one member of the board was interviewed. This year, none. So I believe there may be some opportunities there for input. I do have some questions that over time we can address on the manner in which we calculate our water supply calculations for the financial statement and budget report. Next, do we have some black swans coming down the pike in the area of water quality, particularly PFAS? And if it is found that we are releasing a hazardous substance which may become a hazardous waste, there could be extraordinary liabilities. Recently saw in the Camp Lejeune advertising that hit the press, $21 billion over a single location for wells that were turned off in the 1980s and was trichloroethylene. Far more serious issues with PFAS, microplastics, and pharmaceuticals. So Gatsby may not have come into full cognizance of this issue as it comes down, but we need to be prepared to be able to adjust what could be an extraordinary hit. And I foresee a number of public agencies looking at Chapter 9 bankruptcy. I understand you've had experience with Stockton and the Chapter 9 that took place with the city of Stockton.
Yes, sir.
So that is we'll see how this plays. And it's a issue which we're looking at with some concern. And there's no insurance. It turns out that PFAS are considered to be a pollutant, and only if it's a sudden and accidental release would it be covered by our insurance policy. And that's not the nature of the concern. So, well, thank you. Those are my thoughts. And is there any other issue which the board wishes to raise? Okay.
Any public comments?
Do we have any public comments on our agenda? It was a little late to see your hand go up. Do we have anyone in the who's online who wishes to comment on our audit?
I'm
being
not
none?
seeing any hands up.
So none, no hands are indicated that no hands have been raised. So great. Thank you very much for your report.
Staff does have a
please.
recommendation here to, by motion, accept the audited financial statements and the accompanying reports for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2022.
Do we have a motion to that effect?
I'll make the motion as a member of the finance committee.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded.
Direct-
Roll call, please.
Director Sethy,
Aye.
Akbari,
Aye.
Huang,
Aye.
and Weed.
Aye, and why don't we ask for Director Gunther just to, if there's no response, we'll note he's not.
Director Gunther.
No response. Thank you.
For the record, Director Gunther announced that he was leaving at about 7:14 before this item was presented.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank
It's
you
one of
very
those
much.
awkward things when we're doing things virtually. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much for your.
President Weed, mind if I make a request for a short break?
All right, let us then take a short break and we will be back within 10 minutes. Thank you. All right. All right, thank you. Welcome back to the Alameda County Water Board meeting of December 8th. Time is 7:54 p.m. Our next item then would be the authorization for a cost share amendment number 4 to the cost share agreement for the Los Vaqueros Reservoir Expansion Project Planning. Skipping over
I
think we-
5.10.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
no
I'm-
problem. We've been moving things all around.
I
You're
have,
welcome to
we
move
have.
another one, but
I will go back to 5.10. It was, which was the resolution for finding the main renewal, Dairy Avenue and H Street project exempt from CEQA and approving the project.
all right. And for this one, we'll ask our Director of Engineering and Technology, Mr. Groom Awoke, to get us started.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Good evening, board members and community members. The district has embarked on a multi-year main renewal program, which includes replacing, upgrading, or relining existing water main in the Tri-City area, as you know. This item before the board is a request for the board to review a pipe rehabilitation project in the cities of Newark and Union City and review the environmental clearance status of the project and also approve the project so we can move forward with final design and construction of the project. I'd like to review the summary of the staff report and read staff recommendation and take any questions you may have. Summary, the main renewal, Dairy Avenue and H Street project in parentheses includes the renewal of approximately 4,700 feet of water mains on Dairy Avenue and Dugan Court in Newark, and on G Street, H Street, 4th Street, and 13th Street in Union City. The project is subject to the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, and meets the statutory exemption related to new construction or repair of pipelines less than 1 mile in length and located within a public right of way under Public Resources Code Section 21080.21 and CEQA Guidelines Section 15282 subsection K, as well as Class 1, Class 2, Class 3, and Class 4 categorical exemptions under CEQA Guidelines Sections 15301, 15302, 15303, and 15304 respectively. This project will help meet the district's strategic plan goal 1.1, efficiently manage and maintain our infrastructure to ensure reliability. Staff's recommendation this evening is by motion adopt the resolution 1, finding the main renewal, Dairy Avenue and H Street project to be exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, and 2, approving implementation of the project job number 21191. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any member of the public who wishes to ask a question related to this? Do we have any hands raised?
I see no hands raised.
No hands raised, and let's bring it to the board.
No comment.
Director.
I do.
Yes, Director Sethy.
I have some questions and comments. So first of all, to inform the board, I made an inquiry to staff about what the cost of all these, the total cost of all these various projects that total up to 4,700 feet. That was not noted here. And it turns out it's $5.3 million and it may be increasing. Just a few years ago, when we were planning our budgets for main renewal, I think we all recollect that we were talking about $2 million a mile at the time. That's how we were planning the future. 2 million a mile. Now we're over 5 million. Who knows, it might end up at 6 million. And that's just a circumstance of the times right now. When you're at the peak of a market, in terms of demand for, you know, all the contractors and equipment and everything. So it's not critical of staff. It's just wanted to note the change in economic circumstances from just a few years ago. Number 2, there is a presentation in our package on hazard mitigation from Jake Reed, and noted in that presentation is a grant funding application for the Niles Alvarado pipeline work that we did, which is also a mile in length, I think, right?
It's about 1.5 miles, I think, all told. But yeah, we did submit a grant application for either phase 1 or phase 2, and we still have phase 2 coming up. So there's still other opportunities.
Do we have any grant opportunities here? Because this is historically some of the oldest pipeline that we have in the system.
I would not see a lot of opportunities. You know, it's not it's more of a cookie cutter type of project. So I wouldn't see any opportunities that would make it competitive. Most grant funding opportunities are competitive in nature. So for these types of projects, which are, you know, replacement renewal type of projects, it's really difficult to justify the effort and time required to apply for these grant funding sources.
And just to test my understanding, am I clear that we are actually replacing all pipeline? We're not relining?
Yeah, for this particular project, we are planning to replace the pipes that are in place right now.
With steel pipe? With steel pipe?
They're AC pipes right now.
Oh, but
Most of them.
are we replacing with steel pipe?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Yes, so that's our standard. So when we replace pipes, we either use welded steel or PVC pipes.
Yeah, so these will be a combination. They'll be probably predominantly PVC and a fair amount of steel also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Given the age of the AC piping, I can understand why there are probably a lot of leaks in the system around these neighborhoods. And even though we are asking for exemption from CEQA, I still worry about the fact that these are really tight neighborhoods that we're dealing with. And so it's very disruptive to these neighborhoods. It's kind of like what happened when we were doing the work up at Canyon Heights in Niles. You know, we had to really manage traffic carefully, and we were closing off streets and rerouting people. So to the extent that we can do some good customer outreach to the people that are impacted in these neighborhoods, I think all of us on the board would appreciate that.
We will certainly make sure to do that public outreach way ahead of the project. There will certainly be impacts, but we'll make sure to minimize those as much as possible.
And we might inform them that this one director's opinion, this will improve their property value.
Certainly.
So thank you.
And thank you. Director Sethy touched on it, but there was a time when this was a main replacement projects. We now call it main renewal. We talk a few moments about what the difference in that title means.
Sure. Mr. Awoke, do you want to handle that?
Yes, of course. So we use the term main renewal to address whether we are replacing in kind in place, whether we are relining and retrofitting existing pipes or completely upgrading them in a different location within the same corridor. So we are using it to describe the program we have in the CIP budget. And if I'm not mistaken, we have about 20 million budgeted under the small diameter main renewal program. So this would fall under that. We also have, as you know, a 25-year, more than $500 million main renewal program. So we use the main renewal as a description of the program that we're implementing.
Right, and sometimes we'll renew it. I mean, we're renewing the water system. And so sometimes we'll renew the water system, you know, via replacement, depending on conditions, depending on capacity and so forth. Sometimes we'll renew the water system with other means like slip lining and doing other things that we've done before.
Right. It's a more flexible approach than what we had many years ago when I came on the board. That's
So
great.
I'm sorry, I actually did have a couple other questions that I forgot to ask. So we are going to put this out to bid sometime shortly, right?
Yes, sir.
When would we expect this project to be completed?
So if we expect to put it out to bid sometime in the spring and award the construction contract, say early summer, and with a 69-month construction duration. So we're looking at, you know, springtime of 2024, the latest.
Okay. The reason I'm asking the question is going back to my earlier comment, I'm looking forward to us spending down money on CIP projects.
Yeah, that's.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I would also note that one of the thoughts is that leaving pipe in place, do not call it abandoned, but rather out of service, is something we need to pursue, or at least keep in mind, because a conduit underground can be of great value, whether it contains communication wires or is used to transport less than potable water. It may be advantageous in some areas.
Yeah, and just all of our mains that are removed from service are labeled as such in our records. We don't have abandoned mains or facilities.
That was another idea I had when I first came on, and I'm glad to see the transformation. Great, well, thank you. Is there any other comment related to this? Do you need a vote from the board on this resolution?
I'll make the motion to adopt staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Actually, it's a staff resolution.
Sorry, staff resolution.
All right, thank you.
Directors Sethy,
Aye.
Akbari,
Aye.
Huang,
Aye.
and Weed.
Aye, and Director Gunther has departed, so thank you.
Thank you.
Next is 5.11, which is authorization for amendment number 4 to the cost share agreement for Los Vaqueros Reservoir Expansion Project Planning.
And we're happy to have our water supply supervisor, Mr. Leonard Ash, here this evening, filling in for Laura Heides. So, Mr. Ash, would you introduce this item?
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. For this item, the district has identified the Los Vaqueros Reservoir Expansion Project as an initiative for water supply reliability. This project seeks to increase the existing reservoir capacity from 160,000 acre feet to 275,000 acre feet, and includes the construction of the Transfer Bethany pipeline for connecting the Contra Costa Water District, or CCWD system, to the State Water Project of Bethany Reservoir. On April 30th, 2019, the district entered into a multi-party cost share agreement for Los Vaqueros Reservoir Expansion Project planning to provide matching funds and in-kind services in support of an early funding award from the California Water Commission to continue development of the project and bridge the gap until a joint powers authority could be formed to oversee completion of the expansion and related improvements. The Los Vaqueros Reservoir Joint Powers Authority, or JPA, was formed in October 2021 to provide a governance structure for the project, and the district became a founding member. While funding and financial management activities for the project will ultimately be managed by the JPA does not yet have all necessary services in place and must continue to rely on CCWD to provide those services. Amendment number 4 is being proposed to the existing cost share agreement at this time to continue funding for planning and design activities through June 30th, 2022, with each local area partner's contribution not to exceed $1,094,000. There are sufficient funds in the fiscal year 2022-23 budget to cover this expense. This item was reviewed with the Water Resources and Conservation Committee on October 25th, 2022. Board authorization to approve amendment number 4 to the cost share agreement will help meet the district's strategic plan goal 2.3, evaluate new and innovative water management concepts. Therefore, the staff recommendation is, by motion, authorize the general manager to execute agreement number 4 to the cost share agreement for Los Vaqueros Reservoir Expansion Project planning in an amount not to exceed $1,094,000. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
And thank you. All right, is there any comment from members of the public? Is there any hands raised?
No hands.
There be none. I'll bring it to the board. Director Huang.
No questions, just comments that, what this actually tie into what I learned at the Aqua Conference. It is important for us to have a local supply due to climate change. Los Vaqueros LVE is a reasonably achievable local supply option. So I think I definitely support this item. Thank you.
Akbari.
Okay, well, I'm very much in favor of this regional water project. And so we'll endorse having the general manager execute this amendment number 4. If I don't support this, I will probably lose my position as treasurer over the JPA because it is my job to keep track of all the invoices to the partner agencies and make sure they're all lined up for board approvals and payment on time. I would like to note, it says here that this is for planning and design activities through June 30th, 2022. I think that means 2023 right there, first of all.
Yes, so the existing agreement does expire in 2020. Sorry, the date that's in the
it ends with our fiscal year, June.
Right, and this extension will continue then through, I'm sorry, I just lost it, through June 30th, 2023. The amendment will extend the existing agreement.
Right, so it says 2022 here, it should say 2023.
I'm seeing through fiscal year 22-23. But maybe we
Says-
might have an error in the staff report.
Amendment number 4 is being proposed to the existing cost share agreement at this time to continue funding for planning and design activities through June 30th. It should say 2023 there.
I believe that's right. I
Yeah.
believe that's a typo. Should say 2023. I'm looking at amendment number 4 and it's, the term is through June 30th, 2020.
So
apologize
just
for that
to
typo.
explain a little bit, this is like a bridge funding through the end of the fiscal year for the JPA while we are setting up more formal funding streams and formal banking activities and transitioning away from certain responsibilities of CCWD over to the JPA and the executive director that we hired. So there may be a need for future bridge funding into the following fiscal year, the 23-24 fiscal year. But I don't think we have real clarity on that in the JPA currently. I just wanted to provide that background.
Thank you. Questions I have, my understanding is we have 3 options for participation. One is the Bethany transfer pipeline only. Second is some limited storage for the operation of the Bethany transfer pipeline. And third is to have 9,000 acre feet of dedicated storage. And we still have time to make that final decision as to our level of participation. That has not been finalized, correct?
Our final participation has not been confirmed. I mean, these are parts, this is part of the ongoing work.
Unfortunately, those 3 options were not presented to the board when it was first brought to our attention, even though I had asked for that. I got a blank stare. Next, I'm a strong supporter of the Bethany transfer pipeline. I would note that the 8-foot diameter Bethany transfer pipeline with 300 CFS could easily be expanded to in size 10, 12, 16 feet. And you might well find participation from DWR for an emergency water supply for the state system. If we were to lose Clifton Court, this might be a backup. If you had a pro rata, that would greatly reduce the cost of operation. And for a nominal increase in the cost of the facility, you could get participation, hopefully based on the volume. So an additional 2-foot change in diameter would be a 40% cost share with the state. If you could get Contra Costa to agree to send water to potentially send water to Southern California, to which to date they've had a moral obligation against, a moral principle opposing. And that's their term. So that would be one thing I'd
So we
like.
will be sending water to grasslands and to Delta Mendota.
Yes, but
You call that
reluctantly on the part of Contra
and
Costa.
Santa Clara and ACWD in Zone 7 are Southern California too.
Well, in our mind, yes, and they have danced around that issue. They put in their initial bond for LV1, 2.
Well, I'm very much in favor of expanding that pipeline if we can get DWR to agree to it. And there's a double reason to try and maybe we need a letter from the general manager. It's other general managers. The California Water Commission is putting in close to $500 million. And DWR is supervising what's going on the project. And I asked early on whether the money was singularly devoted to tearing down and raising the dam, or did it include all of these other interties and the Bethany transfer pipeline? It covers everything. So where the beneficiaries of this project. And I think we should be able to define the terms of what that pipeline looks like. We've been looking at it from one side, but rather DWR needs to look at it from the future risk to the delta. That becomes a bypass.
Yeah, certainly, the project as proposed isn't designed to function as delta conveyance. It's designed to function as reservoir storage and regional transmission. So there's been no proposal that I'm aware of to greatly expand the overall project scope to do that.
Well, what if you needed emergency water down at the state pumps?
This would get emergency water to Bethany transfer,
Yeah,
to the Bethany Reservoir.
Right, right. That's what I
Yeah,
think John and I are, that's where we're coming from.
See.
Next, Contra Costa is not participating in the dam. They claim they don't need additional storage, and that is the bulk of the expense. The 9,000 acre feet, a relatively modest amount. We gained 9,000 acre feet at Del Val without any cost by merely a modest change to the operations of the Del Val Reservoir. We proved that over the Christmas week of this last year, that is possible, and it exists, built, plumbed, and paid for. We don't need additional storage at Los Vaqueros expansion. Third, for the same amount of money as LV3, we could build, which is only going to give us 275,000 acre feet total. We could build a 500,000 acre foot reservoir, 5 miles downstream. It would require the removal of LV1, 2, and 3 eventually. And that 500,000 acre foot reservoir could be expanded to 1 million. Contra Costa doesn't want a large reservoir because it might entice water to be sent to Southern California. It's a moral problem and failure on the part of the Contra Costa board. So there is, and the record of decision allowed a 500,000 acre foot reservoir. We could do the larger reservoir, which again, Contra Costa is not paying for. Next, we've made to an agreement that we're going to reimburse Contra Costa 40% of the cost of the original cost of the building LV1 and 2, which they paid on their own, and we chose not to participate, adjusted for inflation. So that'll triple that 40% to 120% of the original cost. We're going to fully reimburse them for the cost of any cost they put into it, and they're not paying anything for the third lift or the third dam. This fails on so many levels. There is a tremendous benefit to the Bethany transfer pipeline. And hopefully, as we go through the negotiations and discussions, we will put a more reasoned approach to the what our needs are. We have $100 million in our CIP for this. We don't get $100 million in benefit. Thank you.
If I may, Director Wee. I'm going to make this short because this item is on the specific cost share agreement amendment. So we're not going to talk about the viability of LVE because we have a long discussion. We actually had a great discussion in our committee, last committee meeting, about potentially using Del Val and expanding Del Val. It was really clear that it would be a very difficult path to get that additional storage because flood control owns it. It's actually a U.S. Army Corps, I believe, owns that portion of the dam for flood control purposes. You're basically you're basically saying we are going to use the portion that the Army Corps reserve for flood protection for storage, which means that if there's high intensive storms, there's a possibility that we'll be flooding people out just because you want to store water, right? Plus, the ownership of that storage capacity is not up to us to decide. There are a lot of negotiation. It is entirely possible, and I believe staff have committed into looking into this. Is there room to negotiate for the flood control volume or capacity? We're following that path. So I just want to make it clear that life is not as easy as what you have portrayed it. There are actually two sides of this picture. This is not the place to talk about it, but if the board as a whole is interested, we could talk about later, suggest a item or discussion. I just want to make the record clear that there are different opinions on what you're suggesting, and the board should have a discussion at some point, but this is not the time for it.
Okay, the decision is yet to be made on whatever level of participation is going to be. The point I made on the Del Val Reservoir, and that was not part of this committee discussion. I appreciate the opportunity to be served. Is it, we're looking at 9,000 acre feet. We have shown this last Christmas that rather than drawing Del Val Reservoir down to 25,000 acre feet for flood control, we could do greater releases and we could maintain a 43,000 acre foot level and still not flood out the Park District Visitor Center with no changes at all. That is, we split that 18,000 acre feet with zone 7. That's the same 9,000 acre feet that we're talking about spending the bulk of $100 million for.
President, we're getting off the subject.
But let
of
us,
what we
but
have
there's been
to
some
do here.
I believe misinformation here, and relocating a park visitor center would generate up to 50,000 acre feet.
I would suggest we
So
have a
let us
workshop where
let
we
us-
can talk about this.
So the decision
and
of what to
debate it.
do is important.
Yeah, and I would say, staff has heard from the board that really business case is very important with regard to LVE and whether and what our level of participation is. And so that's the direction that we're headed. What we're talking about here is continuing on with development of the project and sort of, anteing up as we've done in the past so that we can do that. And so the next few months will be critical with LVE. And there's an awful lot, as I think everybody knows, an awful lot of activity on this project happening right now. So that's where staff is headed, to that business case assessment.
Director Sethy and I had a meeting with the representatives of Contra Costa during the ALCA conference, and I expressed some of these same views. I would note also, when we made the initial authorization for this, staff at the committee argued that we couldn't put that 9,000 acre feet at Los Banos because Los Banos might spill. I found that argument to be absurd. So let us.
I'm going to make a motion to authorize the general manager to execute an amendment, to execute amendment number 4 to the cost share agreement for Los Vaqueros Reservoir expansion project planning in an amount not to exceed $1,094,000. And this is for agenda item 5.11. I will also add, for benefit of everyone here, that this project is moving along really smoothly compared to anything I've seen before of this magnitude. And I was having lunch with Steve Ritchie the first day I was at Aqua, and I made this comment to him because we're both on the JPA board, and we were comparing it to the tear down and rebuild of Calaveras Reservoir. And Steve said that he had the same impression, and that really, he said, you can attribute all this success and smoothness to the excellence of the team at Contra Costa and the surrounding team that they've put together to move this project forward. So it's exciting. It's something I believe sincerely we should be part of long term. So I made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a brief comment, I misspoke. It's San Luis, not Los Banos. So Los Banos was San Luis Reservoir. So please, let's have a motion on the board. Is there any discussion on the motion? There being none, Roll call, please.
Directors Sethy,
Aye.
Akbari,
Aye.
Huang,
Aye.
and Weed.
I'll vote aye because we have not made the final decision to of what our role will be in this project. Thank you.
I will report that to the JPA.
All right, let us then, we have finished. Oh, well, we've got an item 5.12, and here I am going to give Director Sethy the opportunity to take control of the meeting for one item as I excuse myself because I own property within 500 feet of one of the rubber dams and fish ladders. Thank you.
All right, and for the record, President Weed is leaving the boardroom and we'll go get him once this item is concluded. So Vice President Sethy, would you like us to?
So you're turning it over to me and now I'm going to turn it over to staff.
All right, so 5.12, authorization of professional service agreement for fish ladder operations and environmental services. And again, I'll turn it over to our water supply supervisor, Leonard Ash. So me to you to me to
Right.
Leonard. And then from Leonard to you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. For this agenda item, the district is developing its fish ladder operations and water stewardship, or FLOWS program, in preparation for operation of the newly installed fish ladders at Rubber Dam number 1 and Rubber Dam number 3. The district and the Alameda County Flood Control and Water Conservation District have undertaken the joint Lower Alameda Creek Fish Passage Improvements Project to reestablish passage of federally threatened Central California Coast Distinct Population Segment steelhead, Oncorhynchus micus, at the district's Rubber Dam number 3 and at the Rubber Dam number 1 and Bart Weir drop structure on Alameda Creek. This project allows fish to access miles of spawning habitat upstream of these previously inaccessible barriers. Fisheries biologist environmental services are required on an as-needed basis to assist the district with various tasks to meet regulatory requirements and conduct fish ladder startup and operations, and to implement the FLOWS program. This work will require ongoing services that are anticipated to be most intensive during the first 2 years after startup of the fish ladders and will continue for an additional 3 years under this agreement. Staff will continuously evaluate the need for ongoing FLOWS support, and before the end of this 5-year term, will make a recommendation about further contract or staffing needs to support the FLOWS program into the future. There is adequate funding in the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget for this work, and additional funds are planned for inclusion in future budgets through fiscal year 2027-28 for this expenditure. This item was reviewed with the Water Resources and Conservation Committee on September 27th, 2022, and the board approval of this item will help meet the district's strategic plan goal 2.1, maintain and enhance sustainability and reliability of local and regional water supplies. Therefore, the staff recommendation is, by motion, authorize the general manager to 1, enter into a professional services agreement for as-needed fisheries biologist environmental services with SP Kramer Associates Incorporated, doing business as Kramer Fish Sciences, for an initial term of 1 year and an amount not to exceed $300,000. And 2, execute up to 4 one-year extension terms based on satisfactory performance and a continued need for the services for a total 5-year agreement amount not to exceed $600,000. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
So do we have any questions from the board?
No question, just a comment. Okay, sort of a question. So who come up with that really clever acronym FLOWS?
I believe it was one of our water supply staff members, Sarah Mata, who's no longer employed here at the district.
Nice. It's a great project. I definitely will support it.
Happy to support, no other comment.
Okay, so I do have a few questions here. I'm assuming we put this out for competitive bid and this is the firm that best responded.
That is correct.
the first year of the contract is for $300,000, and if we sign up to this, each of the 4 subsequent terms is for $75,000 each. Why the great startup cost in the first year?
That's a great question. So part of the uncertainty with this contract is that we're starting something completely new at the district. Fisheries biologist expertise is needed, and it's outside of the realm of expertise that staff has on hand currently. One of the approaches in this proposal was to take a very scientific and defensive position as far as outlining a scientific approach and how we collect information regarding fish and biological and environmental information as part of our flows program. We expect that the first year is going to be a huge learning curve, and that's why the first year of this contract is so much higher than the subsequent years. But we do anticipate that as we gather more information, we'll be able to make more strategic decisions and basically winnow down the scope the environmental services will need in subsequent years. So we want to make sure that there's adequate resources when we get started so that we can nimbly respond to any unanticipated needs that may come up. That's why this contract is set up in a time and materials as needed basis. We want to be sure that the successful consultant has the resources they need to be able to respond to any sort of services that we may be requesting. And then it's anticipated with subsequent years as we learn more and as we develop the annual reporting requirements in consultation with the resource agencies, that we'll be able to make more cost-effective decisions of how to provide those services in the subsequent years.
Mm-hmm. So that leads to the next question. When you talk about time and material, what are they charging us on an hourly or daily basis?
Yes, it'll be an hourly basis for their time to respond to requests that we need for their services. The consultant that staff is proposing is made up of experts within the state, some of which are local that can respond quickly, and some that are more seasoned with greater expertise that can provide services either at a distance or to come in from Sacramento.
So is it like graduated hourly pay, like in Mr. Miyake's law firm, you know?
In their proposal, they've identified the staff that they will make available to respond to our requests. And depending on the level of expertise and the position that's responding to those requests, there's an hourly rate assigned to that.
Can you provide a range?
I could, just give me 1 minute to look it up, but I believe just off the top of my head,
And my other question is, how much field work will they actually be doing right here on Alameda Creek?
That's a very good question. And again, we will learn more as we start off this project. We anticipate there will be some need for staff to be on site. For example, if we need assistance with biological monitoring and helping to classify our observations, if we do see fish or if we see predators, we may ask staff to come to Alameda Creek to assist us in training and identification. Otherwise, we anticipate a bulk of the contract will be in evaluating the information and data that we collect. As you'll recall, the fishway at Rubber Dam number 1 is equipped with an array of pit tag antenna readers, as well as with a sonar camera. And both of those monitoring devices will collect a considerable amount of data, which will require post-processing.
Have we had any fish sightings this fall yet?
Not yet. We anticipate, we do have some rain forecast for the weekend that we anticipate might be significant enough to attract some in-migration fish, but so far nothing's been spotted.
I saw later in our board packet that the water was running at above 700 CFS, which I would think is quite inducive for getting fish upstream.
That's right. Yes. So over the weekend, this past weekend, we did have flows that exceeded the 1200 CFS. So we did have to lower our dams and we raised them back up again.
Well, that's nice to hear. So the last question I have is we've been working with quite a number of different agencies on putting in the fish ladders, and I'm wondering why we're stuck footing the entire bill. Why is this not being shared with Alameda County Flood Control and some of the other agencies that were part of the fisheries work group?
I'm glad you asked that question because I would like to say that we do have a partner in the county flood control district, and they will be sharing in costs as part of this contract, but costs that relate specifically to that shared joint operation of Rubber Dam 1 Fishway. So the costs that are specifically tied to that joint partner facility,
Yes.
those costs in the biological monitoring will be shared costs. If we have costs, for example, at RD3 Fishway, which is the district's facility, those costs will be tracked separately, and we won't be sharing in cost sharing with flood control in those.
So we take ownership of the contract here, and for RD1 related expenses, we will track that and then bill the flood control district
That's correct.
for reimbursement.
Correct.
Got it. Yeah, it seemed to me that we were getting stuck with the entire bill, and all the other responsible parties that should be helping out with the restoration of the fishery habitat are not contributing their fair share. It's just my initial impression. So good work putting that all together.
I can just add
Yeah.
on to that question. So this figure, the 300,000 and 600,000 quoted here, that is just our portion, or is that the total contract amount?
That's I'm sorry.
I think you understand where I'm going.
Yeah, that's the total contract amount. And as I mentioned, those costs that relate just to the RD1 Fishway will be tracked. And out of that 600,000, there will be some portion that will be shared with flood control.
Okay.
And we anticipate that won't exactly be a 50-50 cost overall for the 600,000. We anticipate, given the district's wider interest in biological and environmental impacts of our fish ladder operations at two different facilities rather than just the one, we anticipate that that it won't exactly be 300,000 that the flood control agency will be reimbursing for.
Could I make a request that if there's a fish sighting that the board be alerted? Because I want to get down there.
I will second that request.
I will certainly commit to passing that information along, and I would request that you'd let me know if you hear about a fish sighting. And Director Sethy, I'll find that hourly information for you and provide that.
Okay, thank you very much. So are there any public comments on this item?
I see no
Anybody
hands
online?
raised. No.
Mr. Nishimura? Okay.
There we go.
Just, it's more of a question along the lines of Director Sethy. So this contract is really focused on biological consultation. Does the district need to have additional consultation or outside services to deal with compliance issues? So if Fish and Game were to inquire about compliance with regulations, would this firm be able to handle communications with the regulatory agencies, or would the district need to source additional external help for that?
That's a good question. Staff anticipates that we look at this contract as being sort of adjunct staff, a resource to our staff in being able to respond to biological and environmental issues that may come up. And we've already seen with the contracts that we do have in place, these short-term contracts prior to this contract, that biological services, consultant services have been very helpful in how we respond to resource agency requests.
Mr. Ash, I will mention that when I read over this portion of my board packet, I went online to look up the firm that's been selected here. It gives the impression here that it's just SP Kramer that's in charge, but it's actually a fairly substantial firm of people. And I was really amazed with all of the various different professional backgrounds that they're coming in from. So it seems to me like we're plugged in with a really good group where it takes a team of different talents to actually see what's going on and figure out what's going on. So I look forward to meeting this firm at some point in the future if they're out here.
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right, if there are no other board comments, no more public, then we have an action item here. Would somebody like to suggest?
I'll make the motion to move staff recommendation.
And I'll second.
Directors Sethy,
Aye.
Akbari,
Aye.
and Huang.
Aye.
And note, Director Gunther is still absent from the meeting and Director Weed had excused himself. So it's just a 3-0-0 vote. That's rare. So I delegate all responsibilities back to you.
Thank you. The great glory. That finishes then the action calendar. We can then move on to reports. Board committee reports. Is there any under item 6.1? Is there anyone who has a comment or question about the 6 committee reports? There being none, then let us move on then to operational reports.
And staff stands ready to answer any questions about any of the operational reports.
Any questions or comments?
Member of the public?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so under the category of operational reports, since Director Gunther is gone, I will go ahead and start with the hardness report. I will congratulate the district. I believe this is the first time I've seen the entire district come in under 120. And it was very heartening to see the very light green color all around the map. Of course, you know, that makes me wonder why that's happening. And I was looking at your production report and it looks like there's a very high proportion of water that's being delivered that's coming from SFPUC. And therefore, you know, that's probably the explanation for the dilution of the hardness. But it looked a little bit like the desal was producing less than expected, as was TP, the water treatment plant. So there's a sort of an implied question of what's going on there. The last thing is that the rainfall report shows that we're on track for a normal year, knock on wood. And the groundwater recharge report, I think Director Sethy was alluding to that, and that we had some flows in Alameda Creek. And I guess my comment there is it's very heartening to see it raining in December. But if I recall last year, we also had good rain in December and then it all turned off. So I just wanted to implore the district, to do everything possible to grab as much water as we can out of that creek. If that means sending somebody up there at 2 a.m. to raise and lower the dam as required, let's do that and grab every drop of water that we can possibly grab coming down Alameda Creek, because come January, it could be high and sunny every day. As a cyclist, I would love that because that just increases the number of days I can hit the road. But from a water district perspective, that would be bad news. And given the fact that it's going to rain this weekend, I would love to see the district be able to capture as much of that as possible. Thanks.
Thank you.
There was a question there. If you'd like, staff can address the question. What's up with facility production rates?
All right, please.
Okay, Mr. Ahrens is prepared to do that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Stevens. Very observant about our system. 2 things were going on in November that affected the hardness. First, as far as the desal facility, in mid-November, I think the 18th, we took that facility offline for maintenance. So it's still down today, but so the numbers in production for the month represent about half a month of production, and then it was off. The biggest factor really affecting the hardness throughout the community is, if you remember, on October 31st was the new notification level for PFHXS, the newest PFAS compound. So beginning November 1st, we again had to revise operations at the blending facility, increasing the percentage of SFPUC water used and lowering the ratio of groundwater. So again, lowered the hardness as a byproduct of that blending to stay below that notification level. So it's a combination of those two events that expanded the softness of the water throughout the community. So it's good news on the hardness scale, but bad news financially and on the production side. So if you have any other questions, more than happy to address those.
Thank you. Any comments from the board? No. All right, thank you for your comments. Then if that finishes the issues related to the staff operational reports.
Yep.
We can then move on to the drought update.
Well, we're not done with Leonard yet. We're glad he's here because he's had a busy evening, and so drought update will be handled by Leonard Ash.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. For the first slide, I'd like to provide an update on local rainfall. And as you see here, the slide was prepared on December 1st, but I have some great news that while it shows 2.45 inches as of December 1st, it's now up to 4.17 inches due to 1.72 inches of rainfall that we've received so far in December, mostly those two storms that rolled through last week. And to address one of the concerns that was just mentioned, our water supply staff was able to divert 773 acre feet during that same time. All right, thank you. For statewide conditions, just an update here with the Northern Sierra Precipitation 8-station index. Currently, if you were to look at this index today, they're currently at 8.8 inches, which is near average for this time of year. And that's 37% of the total rainfall that we received in all of water year 2020 and 2021. With the map on the right, you'll see the U.S. Drought Monitor, which is just one indication of drought conditions across the country, and in this map across the state of California. This map was prepared and released on December 1st. If you do go to the URL that's on the website, they have a very handy comparison slider feature, so you can actually compare different maps. So if you wanted to see how conditions change over time, it's a very useful tool. But if you were to pull the map up for the latest version that was just released today, the only thing that's changed significantly at all is just in the area near San Luis Obispo and down towards Santa Barbara. That red area has been downgraded from extreme to the orange color severe. So that's really the only significant change overall in this map. But currently 99.48% of the state of California is classified as a moderate or greater drought intensity, 44.89% in severe, over 27% extreme, and 12.7% is classified as exceptional. So there are still significant parts of the state that are really feeling the drought right now. And with the next slide, we'll see the statewide reservoir conditions. The current version of this, Oroville, is 28% full, which is 55% of average for this time of year, while San Luis Reservoir is 26% full, which is 47% of average for this time of year. Oroville has 981,876 acre feet in storage, which is below 2021 and 2020 levels at this time of year. But it is on an upward projection, again, due to that rainfall that we've received so far this water year. And then I would note that Lake Del Valle is at about 35,800 acre feet in storage currently. And with the next slide, the water supply updates, really this slide is very similar to what I've been presenting every month. The only significant change here is December 1st, while many of you were at Aqua, the State Department of Water Resources did issue their initial allocation for 2023 supplies, and they did announce a 5% initial allocation. And as you'll recall, that's exactly where we are currently for 2022. So this is basically steady steady as it goes for new supplies that we get from our state water project imports. I would also note for demand tracking purposes that the ACWD customers are continuing to conserve. You're all familiar with this graph because of our monthly updates, but again, the dashed purple line shows the projection if customers are meeting that 15% request for conservation. And we are seeing with the bright blue line that for the month of November, our customers have been conserving. And as you know, they really did start to target that 15% conservation rate early in the summer, right when it mattered most to reduce the outdoor irrigation demand. So we're very pleased that our customers have responded to the request and that they're continuing to maintain those demand management actions. For our water use efficiency staff activity, I would report that there is a solid number of water waste reports that staff continues to receive, as well as engagement for the call and emails that come into staff, mostly responding to questions regarding rebate programs. And then for outreach highlights, I did want to note that ACWD water use efficiency staff is now offering virtual office hours, certain times set aside specifically for customers to meet with staff virtually to discuss rebates, drought demand reduction actions, and many more activities. Their staff has also met with local Girl Scout troops, has been very involved with preparations for the AMI portal launch, which is a very useful way for customers to engage with the district on their demands. And then Imagine a Day Without Water was highly successful at 2 local coffee roasting companies. And the staff, through its water education performer Zun Zun, has been performing school-wide assembly activities. We also continued water education material outreach through Tri-City area educators, and the latest issue of the Aqueduct includes more information about the drought. And then for public messaging, the biggest change as we head into the winter is to encourage customers to make those changes that are needed to only irrigate one day every other week from the November through February months. And even more when there is, even less when there is rainfall. So we've been encouraging that message through various public outreach avenues, such as the Tri-City Voice and social media posts and public service announcements. And then finally, the precipitation outlook. We continue to hear from our state climatologists that La Nina conditions remain ever present. However, the chance of those conditions persisting as we head from December through February are slightly reducing, with even increased chances that we'll enter into neutral conditions sometime in February to April. Another important thing for everyone to remember with La Nina is that it does present a great deal of variability. So again, staff will be preparing for taking advantage of any atmospheric river events that may provide the majority of the precipitation that we expect to receive in the months ahead. As I mentioned, with the rain that we just received, we're also looking ahead. You'll see with the seasonal precipitation outlook that for our area, we are sort of in that equal chances of probably normal probabilities for normal precipitation, but we are anticipating the forecast, at least through this Sunday, of an additional maybe 1¼ inches of rain, which is surely welcome. And then the other near-term forecast, both the 6 to 10 day and the 8 to 14 day forecast, as well as the December monthly outlook, do show increased probability for above normal precipitation. So staff remains ready to take advantage of any precipitation that does come our way. So for the water supply outlook, again, this is probably nothing too new. We expect the way things are shaping up, even with the initial allocation of 2,100 acre feet of new state water project supplies for 2023. We anticipate that our water supply availability looks very much like it did in 2022. And then for our demand outlook, it just highlights the importance of our customers continuing to do the excellent job that they have been doing in achieving that overall 15% conservation reduction. And really, it's those reduced demands that will help stretch our limited water supplies through the coming year. That'll be very helpful. And then for the drought update summary, again, we expect that even with the higher chances of rain in December, that dry conditions may persist for a fourth consecutive dry year. And our water supply availability for the coming year looks very much like it did for the last calendar year. Again, thanks to our customers for conserving, and it's that sustained response that will help us if we have a dry year ahead. Staff will continue to monitor any state level actions and continue to engage with the public as this drought persists. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Do we have questions of the public? There being none, questions from the board?
I have a couple.
Please.
Leonard, off the top of your head, do you know how many acre feet we have stored at semi-tropic right now?
Off the top of my head, I want to say that we're targeting by the end of the year around 106,000 acre feet.
So it's come down quite a bit.
We have taken advantage of our contract to bring back about 13,000, a little over 13,000 acre feet on average during this drought. And that's what our contract allows. And we've been pre-staging some of that in San Luis Reservoir, again, in anticipation that with every dry year, we might have another dry year around the corner.
Well, that's good to know. And where do we stand in the Sierra snowpack by historical standards right now?
That's a good question. I don't have the statistics in front of me, but from what I recall with the update I got on Monday, that our snowpack in the Sierra is above average right now. It's normally good news, but we are so early in the snowpack season, right? That being above average for this time of year is good news, but it's really not anything to write home about. So we'll continue to see how that accumulates and hopefully as it persists with additional snowfall. So far we're off to a healthy start.
I read this morning that they're expecting as much as 6 feet of snow up in the Tahoe area this weekend.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
It is a lot, and just as importantly, not just the snowfall totals, but the cold temperatures are also equally important. And that so far we've seen that combination, which has been helpful, so that the snowfall that does land in the Sierra sticks around.
Okay, good report. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it fair to say that the state has not accepted any of the Sigma proposals from the various groundwater agencies, including semi-tropic?
I can't speak to all the Sigma plans that have been submitted, but specifically for the current plan that includes semi-tropic, the state is still that plan is still under review by the state DWR staff.
So that could become a surprise. There's a question out there. Second was, maybe direct this to our general manager. There was an article in the paper of water agencies and the enforcement during the drought of their water restrictions. And the story at ACWD, as I understand, was we only had 4 notices. We had compliance with those 4 individuals. And so there was no enforcement needed whatsoever, as there was no enforcement required in the last drought at ACWD.
Yeah, and I can just add a little bit to that. It's not as though the only, I'll call it enforcement activity, but the only sort of customer engagement activity on waterways concerns and so forth. It's not as though those 4 letters were the sum total of all of our work. We do a lot of other phone calls and stopping by, properties and so forth. Those letters were sort of the first formal notice that you really need to correct this issue. And so that's all that it has taken in those situations. In those 4 cases, our customers ultimately did make the needed corrections and adjustments, and we were fine. So we didn't have to proceed further in our enforcement actions. So that's what that was about. And you're right, it was a small number, which is great because that shows that our customers truly are working with us to make those changes when needed. But it wasn't a big enough number to make the paper. That was the Chronicle article. I think you're
right. We were conspicuous by our absence.
We did furnish the information. It just didn't make press.
Thank you. All right, great. That completes the, no, we have general managers reports, or do you wish?
Yeah, just got a couple of, I think, quick general managers report. One, super excited to make sure that this gets passed along to you, and it'll come from Jonathan Wunderlich about our customer portal, the long-awaited customer portal.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. So My Smart Water Connect was successfully launched yesterday, Wednesday, December 7th. The new customer portal offers district customers a simple and convenient way to manage their account. It provides customers an ability to view and pay bills, manage their account profile, request service, link multiple accounts, view and compare usage, manage bill and text notifications, chat with district representatives, sign up for help on tap, and explore ways to save water with conservation programs all in one location. These features are currently available for customers on the web, and they are coming soon via a mobile app compatible with Apple and Android devices, scheduled to be available in their respective stores the week of December 12th. Back-end features allow district staff to analyze leaks and high usage and quickly notify customers when a possible leak is detected, along with customer behavior analytics and the ability to target specific customer segments on their consumption. This project, as you can imagine, involves substantial collaboration between district staff, including members of the customer service, water use efficiency, project engineering, and public affairs divisions, along with several vendors. So the vendors included in this project include Smart Energy Water, that's the customer portal provider, Kayenta, our customer information system provider, Badger Meter, they are providing the AMI consumption data that feeds into the portal, Invoice Cloud, who is our payment processor, InfoSend, who's our electronic bill presenter, EMA, who's our project management consultant for the AMI project, and Diameter Services, an AMI public information consultant. And so we're really excited to have launched this self-service tool to district customers. And we also have a scheduled marketing program for the coming days and weeks, which will include bill messages, social media posts, direct emails to customers, postcard and bill insert campaigns, and ads in the City of Fremont e-newsletter and the Tri-City Voice. In the first day of the portal, yesterday, the district's customer service group has already interacted with customers utilizing the chat feature and phone calls to assist with logging in and using other features of the portal. And so far, the feedback we've received has been really positive, and we estimate that probably somewhere in the order of 300 to 350 customers actually already utilized the portal on its first day. We do also plan to provide a full demonstration to the board at the January board meeting and look forward to being able to do that. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Completes the general manager.
No, have one more. Just a quick note, Mr. Ohm mentioned a couple of community meetings that are coming up related to our rates process. And just to give a little bit more specificity in there, so you can jot it down on your calendar, we have two of them. We have an in-person, that's the plan, meeting on January 19th. That'll be at 6 p.m. And again, in person, and this will be at the Downtown Event Center located in Fremont. This is the new event center down there. So we're looking forward to that. Also on January 26th at 6 p.m. That'll be a virtual meeting that will be conducted on Zoom in hopes of sort of capturing as many people as we can, whether their preference be in person or they prefer the convenience of Zoom. So those are two meetings coming up. You'll receive more information about those as we get closer, but I just wanted to give you that opportunity to kind of scratch that into your calendar. And I think with that, unless there are other late breaking GM reports, I think that'll complete our GM reports this evening.
All right, thank you. All right, item 7, which is director's comments, reports on meetings attended, and agenda item request.
Should I start with my Aqua conference report?
Yes.
All right. So it was actually really nice to have the opportunity to actually talk to people in person instead of through Zoom. I had the opportunity to meet Contra Costa County Water District's new general manager. It was definitely a pleasure to meet her, and build this relationship since the two districts do work really closely together. As far as the conference, I also actually had a long discussion with Mr. Clay regarding what he predicts coming up in the new legislative season. That was interesting. But back to the conference, besides just talking to people, I will just highlight one of the sessions I attended on December 1st. I believe is titled Unpacking California's Water Supply Strategy. So the fun fact I learned is that due to climate change and the hotter and drier weather, there will be a 10% projected 10% loss of water that's available to people just due to evaporation. That's pretty tremendous if you think about the amount of water that we're counting on. We're pretty much counting on every drop we have. A 10% decrease comes to mind, and I guess reminder for me personally that we really should focus our effort on local water supply and local storage. And on top of that, that session also actually identified potential some grant funding opportunities for recycled water. It seems like recycled water would be a big part of California overall water strategy. So if there's an opportunity for the district, we should seriously look at it. And then lastly, I did spend some time at the exhibit hall. Interestingly, this time there were vendors for PFAS treatment. There are actually quite a few, including one vendor promised me that the end product of their treatment system would be totally benign. It'd be water. I'm like, okay. That was interesting. It sounds a little bit too good to be true, but I think that's something, the type of different type of technology that's out there. I believe he's proposing to use plasma. There are many different type of technology for PFAS treatment that's coming up. That's perhaps not the try and true like IX that we're looking at. But it's definitely worth following to see what development is out there, see if there's something that would work out better for us, more cost effective. So that's all I have.
So I'll also just talk about the Aqua conference from last week. Similar to Director Huang, I think a lot of my interactions happened just one-on-one with folks that I got to see after quite some time. The big topic that I got to discuss with quite a few people, actually, first I should mention, I also had a conversation with Jonathan Clay about what we can expect from the new legislative season, which was fascinating. And then we talked a lot about labor issues. I actually had a chance to go to the labor roundtable and sat on the same table with the general manager from East Bay Mud, a few general managers from the Sacramento area, and then a couple of folks from down south as well. And it's pretty clear that COVID has really thrown a wrench into everything labor related when it comes to building a pipeline of folks to come and work at your districts, when it comes to retention, when it comes to the hybrid work model. All of these things are still being worked out. And it was very apparent to me that at smaller districts, they're a lot more concerned. I was talking to one general manager who said that of the 20 employees that they have at the district, 15 of them are eligible for retirement, which is a scary situation to be in. And the other concern that came up was actually voiced by the GM of East Bay Mud, who stated that about 25% of their 2,000 strong workforce was hired in the last 2 years, and they've been fully remote since they were brought on. Bringing them back to the office is going to present a significant challenge when they do have opportunities to work elsewhere and maintain the flexibility that they've come to expect. And so, these are all going to be regional issues and industry-wide issues. I don't think there's any one district that's found that silver bullet to, especially retention. But we had some great discussions around that. And then of course, DEI was a big topic. DEI is now a big focus, even just at Aqua more generally. And then we got to delve into that quite a bit at the roundtable. And one thing that really stood out to me, someone made a comment that they're seeing a lot of focus of diversity at the bottom, but not diversity at the top. And so how do you build a DEI focus that also includes ways to help folks to progress to leadership positions within the district as well? And so these are, all discussions that we got to just have at a high level during the roundtable. I did share a lot of my thoughts to the staff that were also present at the conference. And so I'm excited to tackle some of these challenges. But like I said, I think this is going to be ongoing issues and ongoing discussions that we have at Aqua.
Okay, my turn. So day one, on Tuesday, I attended the various committee meetings. I was assigned to the Outreach Task Force, Water Management Committee, then the Local Government Committee, where we spent a lot of time on this issue I've been pushing forward on putting fixed charges on the property tax bill. So we used that meeting to kind of go through all of the comments that were submitted by the Aqua State Legislative Committee from their meeting on October 28th. And we had members of that Ledge Committee with us as well. So that was very productive. Then we spent time talking about the program that we were hosting on Aqua Day One, the roundtable talk, which was on the impacts of housing densification on water agencies. And we drafted up some discussion questions to bring into that group. Mr. Stevenson was part of that group roundtable talk. And we split up into, I think, 6 groups of about 10, where we were all trying to assess how our water districts are adopting policies to deal with the new housing laws in California for the encouragement of putting in ADUs. How do you charge for connection charges, capacity? Who's responsible for paying the bill? And it became clear to me that, well, 2 things. One, a lot of districts haven't yet formalized any ordinances or responses. Everybody is in the same dilemma. How do we deal with this new environment? And so the second issue is for clearly communicating with your public on how you are treating these different ADU units that may be going in your neighborhoods. And the conclusion I came to, and I'm going to offer it here tonight, is that it takes a real coordination between the water district, the sanitary district, and the 3 municipalities and the fire departments to actually come up with a uniform ordinance that everybody can work with. And so my request to staff coming out of this Aqua session, because we're going to have to deal with this in the future, is that we should put together some kind of task force with representatives from each of these different agencies to coordinate pulling together an ordinance that ACWD can pass and that USD could pass something similar, and that we're coordinating it with the 3 city managers and the fire departments. I foresee that this might be a year-long process, so it's not something ordinance we need to put into effect right away. I think there's a lot of thought that has to go into this. A lot of legal work, Mr. Miyake, too. In terms of coordinating with all the other collective government agencies in our area. So those were the two things I was dealing with the most. I was having to do a lot of work on the fixed charges on the property tax bill. We had a lot of things going on in different committees in that regard. So we also had our Region 5 meeting, and I want to pass along some things here that I thought were really interesting. So I shared this with Mr. Stevenson, Government Code 4216.3, section so-and-so. Commencing January 1, 2023, all new subsurface installations shall be mapped using a geographic information system and maintained as permanent records of the operator. So this goes into effect right around the corner. And we are fortunate that we have a Southern Alameda County GIS JPA, where we have a lot of this recorded, but I think it's important for staff to know some of the tools, like from this one company, where you can export the data to Google Earth and then do 3D imaging around somebody's yard or industrial plant or hospital. I found it, some of these tools really cool. I sit on that GIS JPA. I don't know if I've seen this in the past from the presentations that have been made. So I would say explore that. Second, on 2 different days, first, I was really enchanted with what Ratio is doing, since we are offering, like you showed in the slide, Mr. Ash, about the Ratio redemptions that we have going on in the district. Well, they've got some really cool partners that they're working with, where these different technology companies are using Ratio for marketing and sales. And they're just working and focusing on technology that they're developing. So they've got this Tempest weather system that I think is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Ben Franklin would have loved this. I tell you, I'm seriously thinking about getting one of these myself. And then an every drop meter. It's almost like our ultrasound thing, but for the outdoor irrigation system, where you're keeping track of all your water usage. It's an every drop wired irrigation flow meter. And then they've got this other cool thing, which is called a root quencher, where you can actually put in it delivers the hydration and the nutrition. You can establish what you want going right to the roots of different plants in a very productive way. But they are now bundling these other products, like this Tempest weather system. They're bundling it with the Ratio controller. And so when I told them what water district we're with and that we're offering rebates on this, they said, well, we should definitely talk with them about the bundled sale of these products. Let's see. I had one more thing. No, I'll leave it at that. That's it.
All right, thank you. First of all, at the Aqua meeting, prior to the Aqua meeting, I represent this board on the Joint Power Insurance Authority of Aqua. So went in the day before. It was a session which I believe I was instrumental in getting them to put forward, which was on PFAS. I brought in 2 individuals. The presentation was extensive, but somewhat rudimentary. One note I did take was that of the treatment processes, we have to be careful that there is one which is being advertised to heat the contaminated water supply to 500 degrees Fahrenheit. But the problem was noted that that may merely transfer the PFAS from liquid media to an aerosol, making it even more hazardous. So that goes back then to the need to raise the temperature to somewhere between 600 and 900 degrees Celsius, which if you have an energy budget, it's gone. There were obviously numerous meetings at the various presentations, but also the exhibit hall. We had an opportunity to meet with a number of the exhibitors and talk about some of the projects. So I found it interesting that Jacobs Engineering is doing both Los Vaqueros as well as the Delta Conveyance as the project managers, and I know some of the personalities there. And so we had a discussion on that and some of the opportunities, including the expansion of the Bethany Transfer Pipeline, which struck them as being an opportunity to help reduce the cost to the other participants, get the state to participate. So enjoyed that Region 5 meeting. I'm on the Federal Affairs. There's a meeting at the end of February coming up on Federal Affairs, and that will be February 28th through March 2nd in Washington, D.C. And we're members of that. Are also members of the NWRA, National Water, not Western Water Association, and they met in Santa Barbara. We had, historically, this district has not gone to those meetings. If there is an interest in some of the regional issues, there's an upcoming session with the Water Education Foundation with a tour of the southern Colorado River, which is an area which I've briefly touched on, but it might be of some interest. On a separate topic, Bosca is now meeting in Burlingame at a new visitor center. I was a sole no vote not to use that facility because they have no audiovisual capabilities. So they had their first meeting with no public input or public presentation, which is the first in the 20 years I've been on the board that I recall that. And even their policy committee meetings are going to be there. And unless you're there in person, you will not be able to participate in Bosca. It's an unfortunate loss of transparency. Last night, the city of Fremont had a contract for a real estate agent. Appears they have $56 million in a park acquisition fund. They have hired a firm with a $30,000 consulting fee, but a $1.4 million commission authorization to purchase $56 million of properties in the city of Fremont to meet their new park master plan. And it struck me that if there is someone who has land or another public agency that has properties that might be surplus to our needs, it may meet the requirement of 5 acres per 1,000 population that Fremont is seeking, and what they wish to do with it. Fremont also extended for 20 years the lease on Mission Peak with the East Bay Regional Park District, which I noted as someone that gives them 20 years to plan the golf course and country club in Warm Springs that was in the original concept. So those are my comments. Well, and when it was first proposed, there were those who were concerned that the pesticides used in the to maintain the greens might hurt some of the birds. So Fremont has its own priorities. Thank you.
Fourth largest city in the Bay Area without a major golf course, and they had so many opportunities.
We have a par 3 course in the Warm Springs area, and that's lost, but we do have a golf driving range. And if you look at the original master plan for the Central Park in Fremont, there was a miniature golf course in that proposal. So, thank you.
All right, well, that does it for the agenda. Item 8 is adjournment, but before we adjourn, I think there's one.
Oh, yes,
additional-
yes. The
Oh, wow.
opportunity. A photo op.
Yeah. All right, got to get you guys in here. Okay, 3, 2, 1, nice, outstanding.
Let me take off my mask.
Yes. And in the tradition of the Wagner Group.
Yeah, no violence. I'm not going to report any sort of violence here. All right, very good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I look forward to doing my best this coming year.
You can do 1 pound.
And I will gavel us out.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Time is 9:20.